more than a decade, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mandel. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show starts now.
This is not Drew Mandel. This is Ezra Ginsburg. Welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. The man on my right is not only is he not Drew Mandel, he's not Dave Minuk. He is the one and only most handsome man in Winnipeg sports media. That man, of course, is Jim Toth. Jim, you're our pinch hitter. Like, it happened on New Year's Eve when I was in Mexico, Drew was in Kentucky. So you're our ace in the bullpen. So thanks so much for joining us this morning.
I can't believe I get another opportunity. And I was in the minors thinking this was it, but I got called to the show. I jumped on the bus and I got here as fast as I could. So always a pleasure. Always love being on with you guys as a guest or even helping a co-host. So glad to be here. Thanks.
And we actually have a Jets game to talk about tonight. Like, it's going to be a really long day. Like, I was talking about this last week when we were doing the show, like 9 o'clock at night on a Saturday. I don't know if that's ever happened since the Jets came back in 2011, but it's going to be a really long day. I caught you and Cameron talking about it on Jets at Noon. Pierre-Luc Dubois was asked about it. I thought his answer was pretty funny. He's like, yeah, it's going to be a long day, especially for the fans. So game day skate today at 11 o'clock in the morning. And, of course, that really normal 9 o'clock start time, Jets versus Chicago Blackhawks. The game really that we've all been waiting to see.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. The matchup they want. Maybe coming out of the break, the perfect matchup, because Chicago played last night and they're not that good. So it's a nice way to shake the rust off. It's such a bizarre time. And before we came to air, I was looking at the schedule today. It's ridiculous. Like, Edmonton Oilers and Calgary Flames play at, I think, 11 a.m. Mountain Time, because they're both on the road and have noon and 12:30 games or something, or 11:30 for the Flames. It's a ridiculous schedule today. I don't get it at all. And for the Jets too, like, I love Pierre-Luc Dubois' comments yesterday. It's like, so you come off an 11-day break and you don't play until 9 p.m. at night. That doesn't make sense. And it is a long one for the fans. Skylar Peters at our station is a Chicago Blackhawks fan. He's going, and him and his buddies are sitting in the second deck. And
what's wrong with him? Why is he a Hawks fan? We got to talk about that, Jim.
I don't know. Grew up. You got to have it. That's up to him. He's disappointed Taves there, but we were talking about this, and I said, you got to pace yourself for a 9 p.m. game. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I've gone to Vikings games and gone to a tailgate at 10 a.m. for a noon game, and about 11 they pushed the game to 3, and I'm like, Huss and I look at each other. We got to pace this out here because this is a long day. And I think a lot of fans will still be taking it in as, you know, a 7 p.m. start. You're not going to wait to go downtown till 8. Most fans, they're going to take advantage of this, and good for the businesses around the arena and everything else. But for the product itself and the game time for the Jets, if it was the Jets' third game back or even second game back from the break, I could see it. But to make them wait till 9 p.m. to play their first game in 11 days, it's a bit ridiculous to me.
Yeah, there's going to be some people that are, having some pops for sure. I think that's going to make it a little bit interesting and, keep those people up until 11:30 or whatever the game ends. And, we should mention that the post-game show on CJOB is going to be happening right after the game, of course. And we're going to be doing our post-game. Drew's going to be tuning in live from Grand Forks, North Dakota. So we'll have that around, 11:30, 11:45. And I think it's going to be really interesting, Jim, because, I don't really know what to expect in this game, right? Like we talked about it, Chicago beat Arizona 4-3 in overtime. Okay, whoop-de-doo. Both of those teams aren't making the playoffs, but, you expect, and the Jets talked about this, like they're expecting some rust. And when you're off for, 11 days, 12 days, I mean, you don't expect them to necessarily score 3 or 4 goals in the first period, but you got to think that, the Jets are going to be putting some rubber in the net because what is it? 14-3. The Jets have outscored the Blackhawks this year, 3 wins so far. And this Blackhawks team, as you know, just they're not very good, right? Like even if they keep Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves prior to the deadline, this team just isn't going anywhere. So it might be a little bit of a slow start, but I think, if the Jets play anything close to their A game, they should easily handle the Blackhawks on the second game of a back-to-back.
Yeah, I think it's an advantage for the first. I mean, I know Chicago played last night. They've also had a couple of games since the All-Star break, so they're sort of firing right now, or at least got their feet under them. I think it's going to be an interesting first period for sure. But in general, I mean, that's what I'll be watching for tonight. I think if Chicago can get out to a good start and sort of take advantage of the Jets before they shake the rust off, and then they can play out the game the next 2 periods. The one thing Jets have a hard time doing is when they aren't going It's to get it going again. And they've done that a lot better this year. I think there was times last year that when they'd lose something in the second period, they couldn't get it back all game. They do have it back. But I do think the Jets should win this game regardless. I think it'll be a very interesting first period and see what the rust looks like. But then after that, I do think the Jets should come to life. The other way to look at it, too, is these guys haven't played in 11 days and they're itching to get back at it. Like, there'll be a little bit. The 9 p.m. start, I think, to what Dubois was saying was, I'm ready to go. I'm itching to get at it. Now I have to wait even longer. So I think there'll be rust in the first period, but then I do expect the Jets to come back. And like you said, they've been scoring a ton of goals against the Blackhawks this year.
Absolutely. And obviously, the majority of today's show, we're going to be joined by Sarah Orlesky at 9:30. We're going to be previewing the Jets and Hawks game and, talking about the Jets and Kraken a little bit next week. But I wanted to start off. I mentioned this to you right before we went live here. I wanted to talk about the big trade between the St. Louis Blues and the New York Rangers, because I was actually found out about the trade while listening to you and Cameron Poitras on Jets at Noon on CJOB 680. Frank Saravalli, I believe, was the first one on it. And, I haven't talked to you about it, so I thought it'd be a great opportunity. It was just, roughly 48 hours ago the trade happened. And, I thought that the return for the Blues was underwhelming. And I wanted to get your take. Because, he's a pending UFA, Tarasenko. So there's obviously no guarantee that he's going to re-sign with the Rangers. So it's tough to compare the Tarasenko trade and the Horvat trade, because Horvat, of course, signed the extension, right? And we don't know if Tarasenko will sign the extension. But just for those who, forgot what the trade was, it was Vladimir Tarasenko and Niko Mikkola, a defenseman, for Sammy Blais, prospect Hunter Skinner, a conditional first-round pick, and a fourth-round pick. And a lot of people, I think it was Ryan Kennedy of the Hockey News, pointed this out. Like, the Blues have made some really good late first-round picks. Tage Thompson being one of them.
Yeah.
Robert Thomas being another one of them. I'm forgetting one there. But the Blues have had a lot of luck late in the first round. I believe Jordan Kyrou was a second-rounder, Jim, if I'm not mistaken, right?
I think so, yeah.
They've made some really good draft picks. The Blues are a team that, rarely drafts in the top 5 or the top 10 because they're usually in the playoffs, right? But going back to the trade, did you think the return was enough for St. Louis? And, do you look at the Rangers as more of a contender now? Because I always looked at the Rangers as a contender whenever you've got, Igor Shesterkin in net, Fox and Trouba on the back end, and, Panarin, Kreider, and Zibanejad up front. I mean, they're a force to be reckoned with. But now you see Tarasenko scored a goal in his first game yesterday. But what did you think overall of the trade and the return?
Well, aside from the trade, I love that it happened, because I think this will kickstart things. I think the New York Rangers did the right thing. And I was reading Patrick Kane's comments in Chicago yesterday, where he said, I was very disappointed that Patrick Kane publicly said about a week prior that he'll make a decision around the deadline in early March. So March 3rd is the deadline, March 1st or 2nd, if he'll get traded or not. Well, Patrick, what's the wait? You need another 3 weeks to decide if you want to do this. This has been on the table all season long. They asked you at training camp. They asked you at Christmas time. At Christmas time, you told them you're going to wait and see. And so his comments yesterday saying basically, if I'm going to move, if I decide to move, the Rangers is one of the teams I was looking at, but they've seemed to have pulled the trigger on something else, and it is what it is. That sounded like disappointment to me. I think that Patrick Kane would have loved to play at Madison Square Garden if he was going to go somewhere and play for the New York Rangers. And I don't blame him for that. But the reason this deal, I like it, before I get into the intricacies of it, is that it kickstarted some things. I think we hear about this has been an earlier chat than usual around the trade deadline. And I think that often teams wait and wait and wait. And so this trade, to me, what the pieces were of it as, looks to me like a deal that happens on March 2nd or March 3rd. It looks to me like they've heard all their options. They've been weighing them all. Nobody's really stepping up to overwhelm us. So we're just going to pull the trigger. And I didn't think they had to do that right now, but I don't know the market. Like, I don't know what they're getting offered and stuff. But to me, it's like St. Louis almost said coming out of the break, this is what we're doing. We lost 5 in a row going into it. And so we're just going to start. And I would assume that they called the other people interested in Tarasenko and said, this is what's on the table. Can you give us a first and a second round pick? Can you give us this prospect and that? And when nobody stepped up, because nobody has to right now, they're like, well, we've got 3 weeks. We'll figure it out. I think St. Louis said, fine, we're pulling the trigger. We're not waiting anymore. And I think it affects a ripple effect throughout the National Hockey League, that it kickstarts some things. And I think it's an eye-opener for the Jets. Not that I'm saying Cheveldayoff and the crew need an eye-opener, but John Shannon had a great Hockey or Jets report on our station yesterday where I agree wholeheartedly. And when I saw the trade, I said to Cam after the show, I go, this is going to kickstart some things, and the Jets better be on this, because if they want to get something, just pay it, because things are only going to go up. Negotiations are only going to go further. People may or may not get upset and not pull the trigger or pull the trigger. If the Jets want Timo Meier, and it's going to cost them McGroarty or Lucius and Heinola and a first-round pick and something else, if they can sign him to a deal as part of a trade, they should do it right now, because teams are going to get injured in the next 2 weeks. Teams are going to have something fall off where they lose 3 in a row, and now they have to fight for a playoff spot, and they might up the ante for whatever player they're looking at. So I'm not saying it's a ton of pressure, but I think what the deal does is put pressure on other teams to go, and good on the Rangers and good on St. Louis. These discussions have been going on for a while, and they just said, you know what, I'm not waiting anymore. And they got what they got. Now, I don't like the return for it, but in essential, look at the Rangers trade for Andrew Copp. I think it was a first-round pick, Morgan Barron, and another conditional third-round pick. So this to me kind of is the same, except the player is, no disrespect to Andrew Copp, a much valuable player. So I think the Rangers did really well in this. And I just wonder if the St. Louis Blues are like, we could keep holding on to this, but we have to keep in mind the people calling about Tarasenko are the same ones calling about Timo Meier, are the same ones calling about Patrick Kane. So St. Louis is probably sitting there and going, if none of those teams want to step up, then so be it. And now the price for those players has gone up. Like, this sort of sets the bar for Kane or Meier, whoever. And now the teams that have those players can go, I want a little bit more, because Tarasenko's gone and you're not getting him. So it's an interesting trade. I don't think it's full value, but I also am not sure that at the deadline they could have got much more, given the fact that there's some heavy names out there. So I don't mind the trade, but I love the timing of it, just because as media people and fans, I think this is going to kickstart some things. And I think it puts some pressure on some other people, and including Patrick Kane. Figure out what you want to do. You've had more than 6 months to do it. If you're going to hum and haw around, and I know he controls it, but your options are going to get thinner. And so I think that if he wanted to be a Ranger, he should have said, I'm open to being dealt, and give the team the optimal time, because he has final say on it. What he's done is just cut himself off at the knees and eliminated one of the teams if he goes, wants to go to.
Right, and it hasn't been a secret, right? As you mentioned, that Kane wants to go to New York, right? Like, he's from New York, so everybody knows that. But the only thing that has really changed is one team is off the board, and I find it hard to believe that this is a Pierre-Luc Dubois situation. And we don't know, by the way, that PLD, like, Montreal is the only team for him. I mean, the Canadiens are the obvious choice for him, but with Kane, like, what about the New Jersey Devils, right? Like, Newark isn't that far away from, Manhattan, right? Like, you hear that the Devils are one of the teams that is in on Timo Meier. And I think the issue, just sticking with Timo Meier, I agree with you, Jim. Like, I think if you have to give up a first round pick, a top prospect, or possibly 2 top prospects to get Timo Meier, and you have the intention of signing him long term, I think you make that trade, right? Like, is that a first round pick, as you mentioned, Ville Heinola, Chaz Lucius / Rutger McGroarty? Like, I'm not sure. I think, like, McGroarty and Lucius are really interesting prospects. Maybe a guy like Brad Lambert, you're more comfortable trading a Brad Lambert. I have no idea, but you're not going to get Timo Meier in a 1-for-1 situation. It's going to be a draft pick. It's going to be at least 1 prospect, if not 2 prospects. I think the problem with the Jets is that there are probably 3, 4, 5 other teams that really want Timo Meier, right? Like, we mentioned the Devils, we mentioned the Hurricanes. Like, there's got to be other teams that want him as well, right? So maybe Vegas is in on him. I don't know if they can make that happen with their cap situation, because Mark Stone, we know, isn't coming back until at the very least the playoffs, right? So I think right now Jets fans are really honing in on Timo Meier. I think you just have to take it with a grain of salt, though, because of the fact that he is number 1 on the trade bait board for a reason, right? Like, this is a point per game player. This is a very dynamic player, right? He's big.
Yeah.
He's got physicality to his game. He's exactly what the Jets need, right? Like, they need a big scoring winger.
And they need some grit. The one thing, like, I've heard James Van Riemsdyk name out there too, and some people might balk at that. 33 years old, doesn't have a ton of points. He's just a 20, 25 goal scorer now. But what has Rick Bowness consistently said he wants from his team? Go to the net, greasy goals. That's why people love Timo Meier, because he can do way more than that. But the one thing Van Riemsdyk can do is be tough in front of the net, go to the net. That's where he gets all his 20, 25 goals. And so I don't mind that as a lesser expense. Here's the issue with Timo Meier, though. If I'm Timo Meier and I'm looking at New Jersey and some of the other teams that are Carolina interested in my services, I'm looking to sign a long-term deal. I believe his agent said, look, he knows he's going to get $10 million in arbitration, but he understands he's not going to get $10 million a year in a long-term contract. So I take that as he's more than willing to sign an extension if he likes the team he's going to for 7 to 8 years at probably 8.5, maybe 9. I don't know. But so he gets that. The problem with the Jets is if I'm Timo Meier, I look at Carolina, I look at New Jersey, I think they're going to be good for the next 5 years. If I look at the Jets, I don't know if Pierre-Luc Dubois, Mark Scheifele, Connor Hellebuyck, or Blake Wheeler are going to be there a year from now. And say what you want about Blake Wheeler, fine, I don't care. The point to this is 3 players from the top 6 might not be there, and one of them for sure, in a year from now. So then who am I playing with if I sign for 7 years? And so that's a decision that I think that you're going to have to convince him to come. Now, he did play junior hockey in Halifax with Nick Ehlers, but that's the Timo Meier angle of it. From the Jets angle of it, that's the other problem. They can't sign free agents, but the one thing they can do is re-sign players they have. So if they get Timo Meier here and sign him on a long-term deal, I think you have to ship out the McGorty or the Lucius, the Heinola, the first-round pick. But Jets fans have to keep in mind, those are all assets that the Jets have been able to keep. Those are all assets that the Jets, once they develop, they've been able to re-sign long-term. We can go through the list. Connor, Ehlers, Scheifele, Wheeler, Hellebuyck, Morrissey, all signed 6-year deals after some ELCs or a bridge. So you're not only trying to get a player here and sign him long-term, so I don't do it as a rental. You have to have him sign that because you're sending out the players that you know in 2 to 3 years you can keep for another 3 or 4 because they're homegrown and they've come up through the system. It's a huge risk to send those players out when you're a Winnipeg franchise, knowing you can't sign free agents, and the only way you've been able to keep good players is by bringing them up through your system. If you send 3 number 1 picks out of your system 3 years from now, you're not going to be able to sign free agents. You can't sign those guys off their ELCs. And if Dubois and Scheifele aren't here, you're in a lot of trouble. So that's a different situation. Then New Jersey can send all the prospects they want. They're still going to be good in 5 years. Carolina can do the same. Those are the teams I think that'll be well because they can sign free agents as well as, Meier. So it's an interesting situation. I do it in a heartbeat if I can get him to sign the deal. If he doesn't sign as part of this trade, then I don't send those pieces out because those are the pieces I just know that I can re-sign and have for 6 years as opposed to sending them out and a year from now potentially having 3 guys out of my top 6 and nothing coming up the pipe.
Yeah, and thanks for tuning in to the Legal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Ezra Ginsburg, hosting for Drew Mandel, who is down in the United States of America. So is Dave Minuk, and I am joined on the right of the screen by Jim Toth of 680 CJOB, the Jim Toth Show, and Jets at Noon. And we have a Jets game day. It's the Jets and Chicago Blackhawks at the very normal 9 o'clock Central start time. Again, tonight's game between the Jets and the Blackhawks, 9 o'clock Central. We have a game day skate at 11 o'clock this morning. So unfortunately, we're going to be going right off the air when the Jets drop the puck, but we'll have all your updates on illegalcurve.com and, of course, on CJOB 680. And we're going to be joined by Sarah Orlesky shortly. One other thing, Jim, I wanted to mention about the St. Louis Blues and talking about Vladimir Tarasenko and Timo Meier and everything like that. What about a guy like, and we're going to get into the trade stuff, in the second hour of the show as well, but how high are you on Ivan Barbashev? That's a guy that I know Weber has really liked for the Jets. You probably only have to give up like a 3rd or 4th round pick. I'm not sure if that'll get it done. Do you have to trade a 2nd round pick? Maybe. I don't think you're going to have to give up a 1st rounder, but do you think that's a guy that the Jets, could or should be interested in? Do you think that's enough? Because obviously Barbashev is not in the same class as Timo Meier.
No, and so this is what I think. As I think the Jets are going to go big game hunting. I think they're going to try on the Meier. I think they're going to look at the Ryan O'Reilly and all the big pieces, even Patrick Kane. Like, people laugh at me for that, but I'm like, if the options run out for Patrick Kane and you can acquire him, and Cheveldayoff gets on the phone with one of his former players and says, hey, we know you're leaving in free agency. We understand you might not want to sign here long term. That's fine. But come play in this top 6 for the remaining 20 games and go into the playoffs in this top 6 and on the power play and just put up some numbers. I could see, that I'm not saying it could, but I think they'll go big game hunting. What I really think they'll do is the Barbashevs, is the Nick Ritchies in Arizona, is that they're going to augment that bottom 6. We like the bottom 6 better than last year. We think it's more dip, but Gustafson's hurt, the fourth line. If you could bring in some pieces like a Nick Ritchie or what we were just talking about, even Van Riemsdyk, like people laugh at Van Riemsdyk, but I'm like, what do they need? They need somebody to go to the net.
I mean, yeah, James Van Riemsdyk might be, in the last 2 or 3 years of his career, but the guy scores goals. That's what he does.
And the price is right. So Barbashev, I think they'd be interested in. I think Nick Ritchie, I think those are the moves we're going to kind of see this team do because it's not going to cost you too much. The other thing that Jets fans need to remember is, and I just was reminded this yesterday, is they don't have a second, fourth, and sixth round pick. So if you go big game hunting with Timo Meier, you're picking in the third round now. And then, you've also shipped out McGorty, Chaz Lucius, Ville Heinola. So that's a lot of first missing on the draft going into this. So I do see potentially, a third round pick or maybe well, they don't have a third, but a fourth. So I could see a third round pick and maybe one next year, and maybe Jansen Harkins, who needs a new life, for a Barbashev or for a James Van Riemsdyk. And you just add some depth to it. But the one thing that stands out to me when I'm hearing these names and I'm looking at it is Rick Bowness has consistently said, I need some greasy goals. I want us to go to the net. And those are the guys that do it. The Barbashevs, the Van Riemsdyk. And I think we can also look at the stats from those guys this year and even Nick Ritchie and go, yeah, but you put them in this top 6 or you put them on this third line with Lowry and they have different stats, right? So I think that's what they end up doing. I think they definitely look at the Meier and stuff. And I was in on the Horvat. I was the one who a couple of weeks ago said, you know what? If you could get these guys to resign or just get them here, maybe you risk it and then go into the offseason. You start with Dubois, who wants $8.5 million. You don't? Okay, Scheifele, do you want $8.5 million? You want more? We can't do it. Horvat, you want $8.5 million? He took it in New York. I wonder if Meier would do that. Meier, you want to come here and play in this? But the thing that stands out to me about Meier is just that, I think Meier would love playing here, and especially with Nick Ehlers, his junior teammate, and I think he'd like the environment, and I think he'd love this. But it's a different story if there's no Dubois Scheifele down the middle. And Wheeler is as much as I defend him, he's going to be done in a year. And if he does get another contract, it's probably, a 1 or 2 year deal at maybe $2 to $3 million, and it's to play in the top 9, not the top 6. So if I'm Timo Meier, I look at the Devils, I look at Carolina, I look at teams like that I'm like, these guys are going to be good for the next 4 to 5 years. I think the Jets are really good now. I just don't know what they're going to be. So that's why I think the Barbashevs are on the radar for sure. The Nick Ritchies, even the Van Riemsdyk. And when I say that, I think you could get Van Riemsdyk for what, a second pick in Harkins? Like, what are you going to get? And then you still have your McGortys, your Luciuses, that if, Scheifele and Dubois leave, then you move Perfetti to the middle and you got to make another trade. Maybe Ritchie's here and he moves from the third line up to the second. There's pieces you can make this work with. It's not as dynamic as without Scheifele and Dubois, but it's really hard, in my opinion. Cheveldayoff's got job 1A, which is making this team win a Stanley Cup this year. And then 1B, very close, is what does this team look like next year? And then the other thing is if they do pull a trade-off, then you've got to deal those two guys in the offseason, and then you build around with what that return is.
Absolutely. And as Pierre LeBrun mentioned on TSN Insider Trading, it was either yesterday or a couple of days ago, he expects Timo Meier to be traded well before the March 3rd trade deadline.
Yeah.
We're going to head to break now, Jim. We've got Sarah Orlesky coming right up, so we're going to pay some bills, and then we will be right back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's Ez and the Big Rig. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It helps if I'm unmuted, joined by Jim Toth of 680 CJOB Radio. Winnipeg Jets game day, Jets and Chicago Blackhawks at the very normal 9 o'clock Central Time. We've got a Jets game day skate coming up at 11 o'clock. So we might be able to, talk a little bit about Jets game day skate. We started a little bit late, Jim, but without further ado, we are going to be joined right now by the one and only, if I can figure this out. Here we go. There we go. Sarah, there's Sarah. I've never hosted a Legal Curve before, Sarah. So there we go. Winnipeg Jets host and senior producer, Sarah Orlesky. Sarah, thanks so much for joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Oh,
Well,
there we go.
oh no, am I still here? Sorry, you've never
You're still here,
done
yeah.
this. Okay, perfect. I grabbed my toque because I noticed that
It's
you
Toque
two.
Day
had
on
We
toques.
have a
Illegal
theme.
Curve.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
a theme. It
I
is
love it.
Tuesday. It's National Toque Day. It isn't. I don't know if it is, but yeah, I was actually thinking of showing my flow, but I mean, to go like flow to flow with Jim is like, you're just, everyone's going to
excellent
lose that,
point.
right? And so I went with the fireball toque.
It's
It's
the only
been the-
reason. It's the only reason I wore a toque today was to help protect you. That and it's 9 a.m.
We know
Love
it's
it.
been the case for years, right? Everyone knows in Winnipeg media, you can't compete with Jim's flow.
No, can't compete with
No.
the flow. Can't compete with the mustache when it's Movember.
You can't. So that's why, but I was thrilled. So I logged on early to be able to listen to the beginning of the show, of course. And then as soon as I saw it, I thought, this is my dream morning for it. Being able to wear, anyone who knows that, especially, I mean, all my years on the CFL sidelines, I love a good toque, and not wanting also to do my own hair so early in the morning. I thought, you guys are speaking my language. I love it.
It makes sense. If it was the summer, it'd be a backwards hat. It's winter, so it's Toque Day. Here we go.
Here we go.
Absolutely. Yeah, and obviously, Sarah, we want to get into the Jets-Hawks game. I don't know about you, but it seems like it's been like 3 months since the Jets have played. But before we get into the game, how was your break? Did you, go somewhere warm? How did you spend it? Are you very, very excited to get back to, the last 30 games of the regular season?
I am. I apologize as I think my camera keeps moving too. I was telling you in the break that I keep trying to adjust. So when I agreed to do this, I wasn't thinking about the fact that my whole family would be still asleep right now. And I've been told on many occasions that I'm very loud. And so it's not appreciated by people first thing in the morning. So I kept trying to move around my house to try to find a spot where I won't wake everybody. The break was great. It does seem like it's been forever. I actually had to go back through and look at what all the line combinations were in the St. Louis game because I wasn't remembering it because it feels like so long ago. But it's a bit of a sore spot. I mean, I don't know if you can tell from how pale I am. I obviously did not go anyplace warm during the break, but it with a daughter that's 13 and in school, and my husband and I are also coaching her basketball team. There was no going away for the break. We were here in the city for every day.
Okay, so I have one more question before we get into the Jets and Blackhawks. How is the volleyball team doing this year?
Oh, they're doing well. So club volleyball started, which we're a huge volleyball family. Actually, want to give a little shout out. We're out at the Bisons games last night, which we are regular attendees at. And so if people are watching, I mean, you cannot beat going out and see them. I'd love to see more support for university sports, whether that be Bisons or Westman. But volleyball's going really well. And our basketball team is off to a 2-0 start. Don't want to start to brag, but
it's all coaching. It's always coaching.
You know what? It's I often say that to Rick Bowness, and I think I'm going to start to say that as well. It's obviously the coaching. Yes.
100%. I agree. Okay. Jets Blackhawks tonight, 9:00. Again, really normal 9:00 start time. I think we're going to get used to having hockey games at Saturday at 9:00. It's going to be a very long day for everybody, especially, those covering it, myself included, and all of us included. A lot of the discussion this week, only 2 practices, but a lot of the discussion centered around Sarah, obviously, the longer practices and, the fact that everyone's expecting there to be a little bit of rust, especially, in the first period. What are you expecting with tonight's game? Because Chicago obviously played last night. They beat Arizona in overtime. You were mentioning we're expecting the lines to stay relatively the same. We found out that both David Gustafson and Dylan DeMello didn't skate with the main group. They skated on their own. So the lineup should look fairly similar to the game against St. Louis before the break, right? I'm not sure, if it's going to be, Sam Gagner or Saku Manalainen on that fourth line, because there were some different line combinations. But what are your kind of, macro level expectations for tonight's game against the Hawks?
I won't be surprised if we see a sloppy first, or rusty first, sloppy, like choose whichever word you want for it. Won't shock me. But then I think that we'll see them get into it. I mean, the Blackhawks, obviously, third game in 5 days, that sort of thing. So I think that they'll have been able to shake some of the rest off, but they did play last night. Just haven't, and you mentioned the 9 p.m. start. I am sure for some people, that is great news. You know, I heard you guys talk about how rowdy it might be. That's yeah, it could be 9 p.m. start. Local starts are cruel for those of us that have to work and for those of us that like to go to sleep early. So I think that we'll see rest in the beginning, but I'm really looking forward to seeing this Jets group over these final 30 games and seeing how they come out of this. This is a game, obviously, that when you look on paper, they have won their 3 previous ones with everything about Chicago. This is a game that they should win, and I'm looking to see how quickly the Jets are able to get back into it. They've had energetic practices, so I think these guys feel refreshed. They're ready to go, and looking forward to seeing it tonight.
Along those lines of rest, Sarah, and rust, with the big break is Mason Appleton, who's been off for even longer than the break that we've all just experienced and the rest of the Jets have for sure. What do you expect from him, and how has he looked at practice?
He's looked good. I think anxious to get going. And while the player break came at a perfect time for so many others, if it was up to Mason, I'm sure that the player break wouldn't have happened right then so that he could have gotten back into it. But we've heard Rick Bowness say that they're planning to really ease him back in to monitor those minutes. He hasn't played in 3 months, and know that coming back in the middle of February is different than coming back in November, the beginning of December. In terms of the intensity level, it keeps getting ratcheted up. So they've done a good job of integrating injured players back into the lineup throughout this season. But I think that he will be easily a benefit to being able to provide some stability to that Lowry line that we've often seen change over the course of the season just due to injuries. We know what he can bring on the penalty kill as well. And I really liked what we were seeing from that Lowry line several months ago when he was on it. So we know the chemistry that those two can have, and I think he'll be a good addition to this group.
We are joined on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show by Winnipeg Jets host and senior producer Sarah Orlesky, a former colleague of ours at TSN. We were talking about, the big, the 2-year anniversary. It wasn't a good 2-year anniversary, but Jim and I were talking about it and how there really still hasn't been closure for us with what happened a couple of years ago. We won't get into that, Sarah, but it's good to talk to you. And
closure in the media, of course, is going for beers. We haven't gone for beers since it happened.
That's what we're talking about. We need to go for beers. So if we go and we get Westy and the old gang back, Sarah, then Brandon and Drew and Dave, everybody, Huss, Remus, we will definitely invite you. We might have to rent out like a private room or something, Jim, if we get everybody. There might be like 25 or 30 people, right? But I'm still
I guess. But we've been talking about that for a while. Is that it? Just we've always wanted to get the band back together, so to speak, and do it in the summer and just get back together, because you see everybody every day for so long, and then it just ends abruptly like that. But I'm sure we will. It's just been a matter of the pandemic and everything else. So we got to get Huss back from Vegas for the Super Bowl and get into the summer, and I think we'll all do it. And of course, Sarah will be invited, and not just because we'll slip her the bill at the end of the night.
The key is always to be the first one to leave.
Yeah.
You make an appearance, you wait till everyone orders that next round, and then you say, unfortunately, got to get going. Here's my section.
See, that's a veteran move from a veteran broadcaster.
The Irish goodbye. I can say that, by the way, because I am Jewish, but I'm also a quarter Irish. My mom's my grandfather, my mom's dad was Irish, so I can say Irish goodbye, and there's no negative connotation, right? Let's get back to the Jets and the Blackhawks, though, because we talked about Dylan DeMello and we talked about David Gustafson before you came on, Sarah, and and with you as well. And DeMello is a guy that obviously plays big minutes for the Jets, but that means that Dylan Sandberg is going to be a guy that has another opportunity in the lineup, especially with Ville Heinola, now not up with the Jets. He's with the Moose, right? So just wanted to ask you, about the trade deadline. It's a big focus. It's roughly 3 weeks, I think just 3 weeks less a day before the trade deadline. And obviously there's a lot of names out there. I mean, I'm sure that you've seen all the names out there, but if you're looking at this Jets team, like where do you see the Jets augmenting the decor as well as bringing in a forward or two. Like I look at, defense for me, maybe it's because I played defense for, community club hockey. No, I'm just joking. But I think that, defense is always something that you're looking to bring in, more depth, especially this time of year.
Absolutely. I mean, you think about any team that goes on a deep run in the postseason, that beyond what you see up front, it always seems to be the blue line that they have to go deep into the well to be able to utilize. Rarely do you see it be, oh, we only use 7 defensemen on a deep run. It's always a lot more. So I think that depth there is something that a team will always look for. I mean, Kevin Cheveldayoff spoke about that at the midway point of the season, really talking about, look at all of the, people talk about, oh, well, they've got too much depth and that's the trade pieces, and said, look at how many players we've utilized on that blue line because of whether it be injuries or trying to shake things up. And so it's something that I think they'll always look for if the possibility is there to add. But then the same thing up front. I think that's obviously an area that a lot of people have keyed in on in your top 6. And I'm very intrigued to see what this organization does and this management group does in terms of adding pieces to the puzzle for it. I'd love to see, I think, Jim, you had mentioned earlier, adding a piece also that's got some grit, a player that's got some grit to him. And I think that when you look at the postseason, those are the types of players that often come in and make a contribution on those winning teams. And I think that this is an exciting Jets team that has exceeded external expectations. Certainly don't think anybody would have anticipated outside of the group that they would be in this position right now. So there's a lot of things to consider. They do have cap space. We do know what contract situations are like going forward as well. And I think that when you see the way that they've been playing, that there's the potential for some very intriguing add-ons in additions to this group by Cheveldayoff and the management team.
And along the lines of the storylines of what they might be looking for and what they might be adding, I'm wondering what you think, Sarah, this team needs to maybe do as the hockey gets tougher now, as the last 30 games comes along. I think it's a team and a roster that has done a good job at being more consistent, but I think that's something they want to work on during the stretch drive here as well. But I'm wondering the reason I brought up those names is I keep hearing Rick Bowness talk about grit and greasy goals. We know this team is skilled. What do you look at this team and the success they've had this year? What do you sort of look over the next 30 games and say, well, this is probably something they would want to do or want to work on in order to solidify that playoff position?
I think absolutely the consistency that you talk about. And we've seen, it's funny because they'll go through, we've seen them obviously before the break, a big win against St. Louis, but we've seen them have times where, they've dipped down and their level of play hasn't been what fans are wanting to see. And I think that's inevitable when you have an 82 game schedule, that you're going to see it. But I think that people also have to remember that this is that there's a lot of work that has been done in this group for it, and it's not something that's going to change overnight. And so getting that consistency going isn't something that you can just turn the switch on game 1 or game 5 and say, okay, well, any of the problems that we had last year just disappear because it's a new face here. That sometimes, especially if there are some struggles on the ice, that old habits sometimes creep back in. And I think that that's just human nature with it. So looking at this group, it's how do they rebound from some of those? How do they get that consistency going? Because if they're going to play well into May and they're going to make a deep run like what we saw in 2018, that's what they need. They need to be able to find that. And they have talent. I think that this management group will obviously look to add to it, but that to me is the biggest thing. Do we see them continue to do the buy-in, continue to improve a little bit more every day? And I feel ridiculous saying it because we are the kings and queens of saying, we don't want to hear cliches, and it is such a cliche. We just need to get a little bit better every day. But but it is true for it. And I think that if we see that as that consistency come in, that this has the potential to be such an exciting team in the postseason. They're an exciting team this year in the regular season. And I just think that, you add a little bit more and you get a few more games under their belt, and this could be an incredibly exciting spring for it. And we know there is no better time for hockey than in the spring, and particularly in this city. We all remember what the atmosphere is like.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of white around that Dale Hawerchuk statue for sure. We're joined by our good friend Sarah Oleski on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show with my co-host, the very handsome Jim Toth, filling in for Dave Minuk and Drew Mindell, who are currently on vacation in the United States of America. And I wanted to just pick up on that.
Can I just say that I love that you clarify, like you do the full name, that they're in the United States of America. They're not in the US.
I like that
They're
too.
both in the United States of America.
Absolutely. You got to say the full thing. It's a little bit long, but yeah, I got to say it. I could have said the US. You're absolutely right. I could go États-Unis, right? I graduated with a French immersion diploma from Kelvin. So I could say, États-Unis with my absolutely horrible Anglophone accent. Yeah.
If they go to Europe, don't say, "Oh, they went overseas." Go, they went to the county of Susa in South France or something like that.
Drew likes to remind us his wife is from Kentucky, right? So he likes to remind us that it's the Republic of Kentucky. And when he starts getting into that, I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Isn't it just Kentucky? Like, and so Drew says it's a republic. So we got to say, do what Drew says, I guess.
It.
But, just picking up on what you said before, right? Like the Jets are comfortably in second place, and Minnesota's been kind of middling a little bit, and Colorado obviously didn't play very well against the Tampa Bay Lightning. I think it was 5-0 the other night, Tuesday night or Wednesday night. But if you look at where this team is right now in the standings, and further to your point, I mean, you're always looking to get better, and the Jets would love to finish first and leapfrog Dallas and get the home ice advantage. But when you're talking about where they are right now, where this team is, and the last 8 or 9 games before the break, probably starting with that Arizona game. Like, I guess in a long-winded way, Sarah, I look at the Jets and, I think that they match up well against any team in the first round.
Mm-hmm.
And I think going back, I think sometimes, in Winnipeg, we're afraid to, talk and play up Connor Hellebuyck. But the way I look at whether or not you're playing, like if the Jets play the Wild, if they play the Avalanche, the Stars, whoever, I still think that they're going to have a huge advantage in net. And that's what it all comes back to for me. The Jets top 6, you have a lot of point per game players there. The top 6 is just as good as most teams. But you've got the ace in Connor Hellebuyck. And, to me, that's, what is always the most important thing is the way he's playing, especially once you get closer to the playoffs.
Absolutely. You often hear the narrative years of, well, they rely too much on Connor Hellebuyck. And I always think back to Dennis Behak. Like, well, he gets a paycheck too. I mean, what is this? We rely too much on him. Well, he's a focal point of this team. You should, I'm now not saying they need to make it difficult on him every night, but I mean, he is an ace for this team. So you use it to your advantage that you have someone of his caliber in net. But I think that we haven't always seen in the postseason, we haven't always seen the best from Hellebuyck like what we have in the regular season. I think it's always led to questions about whether or not, does fatigue start to set in a little bit with the number of games that he's played in the past. I think he's looked great. Obviously, another all-star year so far. He's looked great this season. And he is going to be the key. Every series, what can be the difference if he steals you a game? Or he steals 2, and maybe, you run into a hot goalie or the goals don't come in a certain game. But so he is going to be key, but I also think that he needs to have the run support for there. You can't be looking at only scoring, say, a goal in a game and expecting in the 7-game series for him to be able to steal you. He's not scoring the goals as well, even though he has tried in recent games for it. But he's an absolute difference maker. I think that you look at his numbers this year, how great would it be if you're able to go into a series with him feeling good, with David Rittich feeling good when you need to call upon him to be able to help out, and to be able to have Hellebuyck steal you a game or 2 in the playoffs is what often I think we see as a difference maker with the teams that go deep or the teams that eventually win. They have a goalie that steals them games here and there.
Sorry, Sarah, before Jim asked you a question, I don't know if you saw the comment there
No.
about Jake Ottinger. Yes, I should mention Jake Ottinger is a great goalie. When you're talking about those 4 teams, the Avalanche, the Wild, the Stars, Ottinger is a great goalie, but I think most people would still take, again, it's not a direct comparison, but I'll still take Connor Hellebuck over Jake Ottinger just simply based on his experience in the playoffs and the Vezina Trophy. So just wanted to mention that Ottinger is a fantastic goalie, top 10 probably in the league, but when you're talking about Hellebuck, he's probably 1 or 2.
For
Just wanted
sure,
to
yeah.
mention that,
Yeah.
I like what you said about Dennis Bayek. Connor Hellebuck gets a paycheck too, and I've had that struggle with some fans who reach out and said, "Well, so and so gets all his points on the power play," and I'm like, "Yeah, the power play is a part of hockey, and it wins and loses you games, as we've seen in this year. It's okay
Absolutely.
to get most of your points on the power play as long as the power play is working. Same with the penalty kill. Like, he's just a penalty killer. Well, yeah, that's part of the game, and that's how they win games." I wanted to ask you, Sarah, I had this conversation with a listener who reached out via email last night, and it brought up some really good points. He disagreed with me that this is the best roster we've seen in 11 years. He said the 2018 roster was, and when they went to Vegas, he said they got out goalied, and I agree with that. I thought they did get, it wasn't that Hellebuck was weak in that series in 2018, but I countered him with the points that the fact that Hellebuck's a better goalie than he was in 2018 overall, and that doesn't mean that he was bad then. It just means he's obviously gotten better as the years have gone by. The fact that Scheifele's better, the fact that Josh Morrissey's better, we could go down the roster. I think this is the best roster and the best chance this team has had in the 11 years to win the Cup. It's the deepest and it's the most talented. And I think a lot of people look at it and go back to 2018 and say, well, that roster was good because Byfuglien and Myers were here and all that stuff. But I think what people forget often in hockey is players get better. I think Josh Morrissey has mentioned that to me this year when we've had him on the show, where he said, I think a lot of times people forget that every summer we're working on getting better, that just because we made the NHL and got a huge contract, it doesn't mean we can't get better at 26, 27, 28 years old. So I wanted to ask you that, like, comparing the 2018 roster to this one, and there were some stars on that team for sure. Is this the best roster in the 11 years and the best chance? I'm not saying it's a guaranteed Stanley Cup winner, but I do believe that this is the Jets' best chance and looking to augment it as well to do some damage in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know whether or not I'd have to go back and think, okay, it's 9:57 in the morning, Jim. I mean, throwing out the 2018 roster.
And before you answer that question, can you run down that roster and who was with the Moose at that time?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Line combinations, everything.
So I'm sitting here, I've only had one coffee. You need to at least have 2 before you take me back. I just told you I had to go back and look at the line, what the lines were.
Sarah, Jim just wants to talk about Matty Perreault. That's really what this is about.
No, I want to bring this up because you mentioned,
fair.
we're the kings and queens of this in Winnipeg. We're also the kings and queens of waiting for the other shoe to drop all the time. We always, no matter how good a team does in this city, we're always sort of waiting for, I just think that if you look at Hellebuck alone and the goalie he's become since 2018 this is a better roster just because the players that were on it have gotten better.
Yeah, I have to go back. I mean, that blue line in particular, you look at in 2018, at that time, I really liked, which I don't think that they necessarily have the same sort of pieces that they do now on it. But I do think that when you look across the landscape of the West right now, you have, I think this is a good opportunity for the Winnipeg Jets. And certainly their player, I mean, Ehlers is a better player now. Scheifele, Connor, you can go down the list, Hellebuck as well. And Josh Morrissey with the season that he has had goes without saying for it. But I think that just when you look across the landscape of the West, that this is one where you think, okay, the opportunity could be there for the Jets to go deep as well. That maybe they're not, at least right now, when you look at it, running into the same sort of, or potentially running the same sort of roadblocks. And you think, I mean, Dallas would be a great challenge if they face them at some point in the postseason for it. But I do think that this is an opportunity more so for me when you look at the landscape of the West for it to be able to make that deep run.
Right. Yeah. And that's a valid point too. Like the defense,
Angelo.
I think was pretty deep. I remember talking to Ryan McGill, who was an assistant coach with Vegas, and after the loss in the 6th game, and I said, what did you think? And he goes, honestly, I think that you got out goalied. I think Marc-Andre Fleury was better than Hellebuck. And he said, but I think Hellebuck's going to be a really, really great goalie. And then he said, the other thing is I think Dustin Byfuglien is a game changer, and I think he ran out of gas in that series. Those were the two reasons he thought that Vegas beat the Jets. And that was probably an hour after they had beaten them. And so the blue line is different too. I think often in hockey, much like we overlook a goaltender needing to win you 10 or 12 games in a season, or a power play to win you 10 or 12 games. I think we often overlook that as players grow, they get better and they get stronger and they get smarter on the ice. And so I just think when I was hearing that from one of our listeners, that I think that a lot of people with this team, and maybe it's because of predominantly the same roster going through what they went through last year, waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I just sort of see this team in a different fashion. I see that, not that they don't have work to do, and not that that room can't be, a little fragile at times still, but they have this sort of core of players that have developed, gotten better, and matured on and off the ice to the point where I think fans should believe in this year's roster.
Oh, I think they absolutely should believe in this roster. There's no doubt about that. And don't take my comments as not believing in it. I think that when you see what they've done, the talent has always been there. There's a reason why going into every season over the last several years that, the prognosticators always selected the Jets as being one of the top, one or two teams in the NHL or in Canada, one of the teams that is who's going to be the first Canadian team to end the Stanley Cup drought. There's a reason why people would always choose Winnipeg, was because the talent that they have. You look at that elite talent. We didn't see them put it together last year. I think we are seeing it this year, and they're buying in. And I've said this, I'm sure I've said this on here before, and many people that cover this team, I'm sure, have said it on your show, but there is a different feeling around this team and this room than what we have seen in the past. And I've covered the team since day one for it, that this is just, and I'm not saying that, that everything is perfect in there and that this is the year they're going to win the cup, but there is a different feeling around there. I think this is a very likable team. I think this is a hardworking team, and this is a team that people can get excited about. They don't play a boring brand of hockey. We know the talent that they have, and there's a lot to be excited about with the group, for sure.
I agree with you 100%. And, when you think about, guys like Nikolai Ehlers, Josh Morrissey, Kyle Connor, that's why I put that. I thought that would make you chuckle, Sarah. Before we let you go, though, I mean, you're not covering the Bombers anymore for TSN. You work for the Jets, but I know that you're still going to be watching Super Bowl 57. So I was going to, get into that, obviously later with Jim and get his prediction, because I know he's a huge Eagles fan. Just kidding. But Sarah, Super Bowl 57, you got the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. I guess, what is your prediction? And also, what Rihanna song are you most looking forward to hearing?
Well, so as I mentioned, I have a daughter. She's 13. She's most excited about, despite my best attempts to get her to become a diehard football fan. I'm not there yet with it, but she is a halftime show fan. So Rihanna is going to be a huge hit in our house. So, that's a great question. Probably something with, I don't know. I like her older stuff. I don't know. Umbrella. Is that really? That's
a little
mid-2000s.
A little known fact that Sarah's a big NWA fan, and then that's when she stopped really evolving from music. She's still listening to them. And
yes, that's exactly it. Jim, we've had that discussion before. I'm just stuck in it, and I can't believe that
your passion for NWA often comes up in our conversation.
It comes up often. Weekly, I would say.
It regularly, exactly. In the press box, that's always what I'm doing.
Jim, the life lessons NWA has taught me are immense. Often during intermissions is what we talk about.
But I love that you're asking two NFC North diehards about this game, with the pain that both of us have experienced this season for it. I'm going to go Eagles, though. Although I feel it's tough to go against Lions. Sorry, my dog's not happy that I haven't let him out yet.
The dog is the first one up, Sarah.
No one
dog's
else
a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, exactly. He goes, well, how are you going against Mahomes? No, I'm going to go Eagles for the win.
Interesting. Yeah. You know what? I'm obviously a big hockey guy. I'm not as big of an NFL guy, more of a CFL guy. So I don't have a rooting interest, Sarah, but I mean, I feel like I'm rooting for the Chiefs just for Huss because he's in Vegas.
True.
And he's obviously the biggest Kansas City fan. He loves the Royals. He loves the Chiefs. So I think I'm going, with the Chiefs, but I'm actually more interested in the halftime show as well. And one of the other songs I was going to throw out that's a classic is Diamonds or Don't Stop the Music.
There's so many.
We Found Love, Pond to Replay we've got up there, Umbrella, as you mentioned. So I'm really excited probably.
Wow.
So I'm picking Rihanna for the Super Bowl 57.
What if
That's what I'm going
Jay-Z
with.
came out with her? They could do Run
Oh, wow, that would be
This Town.
controversial.
Oh. Well,
Yeah.
Beyonce doesn't need him to go out with her.
That's true.
Beyonce can
Yeah.
do this on her own.
We Can't
So,
Stop the
Rihanna.
Music. I didn't even know that was her song. That's an amazing song. See, that's why I'm going to be watching. I'm going to be like, how old am I that I know all these songs but had no idea Rihanna sang them?
That's my issue all the time too, Jim.
I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
Sarah, thank you so much for joining us. Sarah Orlesky, Winnipeg Jets senior producer and host, good friend of the show. If you remember when we were still on TSN 1290, Sarah was on probably the most epic show ever. We had Sarah on talking about a possible Patrick Laine trade, and then literally 5 minutes later, after Sarah was off with us, Pierre-Luc Dubois became a Winnipeg Jet for Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic. So we always appreciate you joining the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Hopefully this show with Jim co-hosting was just as epic as that time that you came on right before Laine was traded with Roslovic for Dubois. So Sarah, enjoy the game tonight. It's the first game in a long time between the Jets and the Blackhawks, 9:00 puck drop at Canada Life Center. So again, thanks so much. And hopefully we'll run into you at the arena in the near future.
Absolutely. I look forward to it. Thanks so much for having me on. Enjoy what will be a very, very long day.
Yes.
today.
Yeah.
Hey,
We're
Sarah,
going to bed at 1:00 probably this morning.
And this time, if you leave and in 5 minutes the Jets acquire Timo Meier, please call back on.
You know what? It's because I don't have a hair appointment booked today, as he will be able to tell you, and that's usually the key to when a trade will happen. Usually happens when.
Yeah. If Sarah's got her toucan and there's no hair appointment, Timo Meier is not becoming a Winnipeg Jet. So you're just gonna have to wait. It might be another week or two. Yeah, we got a few days to go before the trade deadline. So
It's what Kevin asked me before they make the trade. Like, Sarah, have you done your hair yet today? Okay.
Do you have anything
can
booked
make a trade.
today? Because I'm going to pull the trigger on this massive deal.
Yeah, Dregs, Frank Saravelli, LeBrun, these guys, Elliot, they don't get the trades until Sarah has given it the green light, right? Chevy goes to Sarah first, and then we know what the deal is. Sarah, thank you so much again for joining us, and enjoy the game tonight. And we will catch up with you soon.
Have a great day, guys.
Bye, Sarah.
Okay, let's head to break. We'll be right back on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Keeping Winnipeg laughing for over 30 years. Rumors, Canada's longest-running comedy club, bringing you the biggest laughs from the best comedians on the planet. Jerry Seinfeld, Chris Rock, Jon Stewart, Dennis Miller, Brad Garrett, the greats, and all the up-and-comers too. When was the last time you laughed out loud? Make it a great night out with friends, or book your office or birthday party. Even a fundraising event at Rumors. Get all the details and dates on upcoming shows at rumorscomedyclub.com.
Hi, Ez. A strange question for you. But why are you lying on the ground being crushed by a piano?
Well, Drew, I definitely tried to carry this baby grand piano down the stairs by myself, and somehow I failed miserably.
Right. I'm sorry. That was a silly question on my part. My apologies. Would you like me to call Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage to help you move the piano? They are the most experienced piano moving company in Winnipeg, after all.
Yes, please call Rolly's and hurry. This piano is very, very heavy.
Rolly's Transfer Moving and Storage offers stress-free residential moving services while taking great care of your personal belongings, including your piano. At Rolly's, no job is too big or too small. For more information, visit rollys.com.
Hi, it's Drew from Illegal Curve here. Selling your home can be stressful, but it wasn't for me. Thanks to my friends at Zappia Group Realty, they made the process so easy. My home sold within 48 hours and with multiple offers. Zappia Group Realty took care of everything with their exquisite customer service and attention to detail. If you want to sell your home for more in less time, get started by talking to Frank and Mauro Zappia of Zappia Group Realty. Online at zappiagroup.com.
Hey, Drew,
Ezzy, whoa, what a smile!
Yeah, I got my crowns done at Linden Market Dental Center, and they whiten my teeth.
I see.
They're so bright that every time I smile, they go,
We have hockey tonight. Do you have a mouth guard to protect those pearly whites?
I sure do.
Whoa, they even ting through the mouth guard.
Linden Market Dental Center covers all your dental needs, from restorative to cosmetic dentistry, and will fit you with a sports guard for that active lifestyle. 877 Waverly. See lindenmarketdental.com.
So you're a pizza person, you married a wing person, but somehow your kids are salad people. You can't pick your fam, but you can pick your BP meal deal, starting from $18.99 for takeout or delivery at bostonpizza.com.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, Saturday morning, 10 after 10 in the morning. Big thanks to Sarah Orlesky of the Winnipeg Jets for joining us. Just great to catch up with Sarah. Like, always enjoy talking to Sarah. I haven't run into her as much this year. I've only been to, I think, 2 or 3 Jets games live. Been watching them, as you know, Jim. We're dads, so we're oftentimes watching live sports on PVR. So I'm always, happy if I get to watch a full 3 periods, and that's not going to be an issue tonight. And thank you to everyone who is currently joining us live on our YouTube channel and our social media platforms. Ezra Ginsburg here, the new host of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. We finally gave Drew his pink slip. And the new co-host of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show is Jim Toth of 680 CJOB Sports, the Jim Toth Show, Jets at Noon, with our friend Cameron Poitras. So, Jim, let's get back into the Jets and Blackhawks. And by the way, if you're watching, smash that like button, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel. And while you're at it, subscribe to Kenny and Rennie, subscribe to Skates and Plates, Brandon Rewicki, subscribe to, obviously, Winnipeg Sports Talk with our good friends Andrew Hustler Patterson and Michael Remus. We're going to keep this thing going. I mean, Bell can't shut us down, right, Jim?
Yeah, no, it's been a quite the ride, and I really appreciate all the good work that everybody's doing in the community. And I think the fans appreciate the fact that everybody's show works with each other. Like I kind of, Kenny and Rennie comes on after Huss, and you guys come on in and around it as well too, and everybody's on everybody else's show to just do what fans of the Jets I think like to do, and that's just talk Jets. There's a lot of passion in this community, so it's all going great. And it's funny how when things turn out one way, Westwood used to always say, when one door closes, another one opens, and you never know where it's going to lead to. And I think a lot of people from the Bell days have gone on and done some great things. So it's always great to see everybody doing well too.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we should mention, we did have to have a little bit of a fight there, right? Like we had, like, similar to, the big fight in Anchorman, we had to have, like Illegal Curve versus Winnipeg Sports Talk versus Kenny and Rennie. So we had a bit of a lumberjack match there, and then, settled our differences, and now we're all good. But yeah.
Then the public broadcasting channel came and said, "Don't forget about us."
Exactly. That was Brandon Rewicki, actually.
That was Brandon Rewicki who came in.
People that haven't met Brandon don't know that this guy's absolutely ripped. He's a big dude. So are you, Jim, but Brandon Rewicki, he's got the combination of the good flow and just being a buff individual. So Brandon,
a buff individual and youth. He's got youth on his time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We're not going to talk about him being a Flyers fan. We'll leave that to another day here. But
I work with his brother now. Tyson Rewicki is with us at OB, producing shows and dropping Eagles knowledge all week. So the whole family went to the Flyers game, and we're just ecstatic over that 4-0 shutout. And then the whole crew of the Rewickis will be watching this Super Bowl tomorrow. So
love it. Absolutely love it. And we'll get into the Super Bowl at the end of the show. Super Bowl 57, of course, tomorrow, between the Kansas City Chiefs, Hustlers, Kansas City Chief, and the Philadelphia Eagles. And obviously the Rihanna halftime show we'll touch on again, because who doesn't like Rihanna? Let's get back to the Jets and Blackhawks. As we mentioned tonight, puck drop, 9:00, Canada Life Center. And we should mention we've got the post-game show tonight with me and Drew. Drew will be broadcasting live from beautiful Grand Forks, North Dakota. That'll be somewhere around 11:45, midnight, something like that. It's not going to be an early night, folks. So hopefully you'll be able to join us, and obviously tune in to the post-game show on 680 CJOB. Is it going to be is it Derek Taylor tonight?
No,
Jim,
Kelly Moore's back,
show?
Actually. Yeah,
What's Kelly? Okay.
Moore, after covering hockey and being involved with it for over 100 years now, got a nice little vacation, him and his wife, for about a month. So he's back, and I believe it's his first game back tonight too. So he's really excited to go. We talk about Russ. We had him on the show yesterday.
Yeah, I was listening.
He was just pumped and ready to go and firing one-liners at us both. So I think he's going to shake the rust off real quick. Pre-game show, of course, at 7 on 680 CJOB.
Absolutely. 7 o'clock, and then the puck drop is 9 o'clock, and then post game show on 680 CJOB somewhere around 11:30 to 11:45. Kenny and Rennie, I'm sure we'll have the post game show somewhere around, I don't know, quarter after 12 in the morning. But we mentioned the Chicago Blackhawks played last night in Chicago, so they travel. It's not like a long flight or anything like that, but coming in second game of the back-to-back, this Blackhawks team is just horrible, as you know, Jim, and as everybody watching the show right now knows. The Jets have handled them quite easily, scoring 14 goals in the 3 games or 4 games. I think it's 3 games.
I think it's 3, yeah.
The Jets have won. So we talked about it a little bit with Sarah. You've got Mason Appleton coming into the lineup, and I wanted to start there because I think, the idea was, Mason Appleton will eventually join Adam Lowry, his good buddy, on the third line, and then Morgan Barron, of course, is the other winger on that show. So I guess, a couple part question here with Mason Appleton. It looks like he's going to start on the fourth line. Kevin Stenlund's centering that line with either Sam Gagner or Saku Manalainen. It looks like Axel Jonsson-Fjällby is most likely going to be, based on, Jets practice, looks like AJF is going to be the odd man out. So hopefully he gets into the lineup soon. But what are you expecting out of Mason Appleton, not just tonight, but kind of going forward? Because this is a guy who hasn't played hockey in almost 3 months. And, with his size, and he can chip in a few goals here and there. Are you expecting that third line to eventually be Appleton, Lowry, and Morgan Barron? And also, I wanted to throw in the play of Morgan Barron. The goal scoring maybe hasn't been there as much as you would like, but I think Morgan Barron, is a guy that has been, just as advertised. He gives you size, and he can also chip in offensively. But I guess, what do you think of the look of that third line going forward the last 30 games of the year?
Well, and we talk a lot about Cheveldayoff, but I don't know that he's lost a trade of the magnitude of even the Andrew Kopp. I mean, he got the picks, he got the first rounder, which turned into Brad Lambert. And then you look at the other picks that he got in that deal. But Morgan Barron is somebody who much was like Neil Pionk. When the Jacob Trouba trade was made, I kind of said Morgan who, and was looking some things up. And I thought, and then, I've stopped doing this as over the 11 years. I've stopped going who and just gone, well, this is going to be somebody. Like, I'm not saying a Hall of Famer, but somebody, because Kevin Cheveldayoff is the one who chose him. And so much like when Neil Pionk came here, and I know Neil's having a rough year this year, but the scouting system and department for the Jets is always good. So I love everything about Morgan Barron. I do think there's some offense there, but realistically, he's the guy who replaced Andrew Kopp. Andrew Kopp can play in the top 6. But I'm not
sorry to interrupt you, Jim. We have a message up on the screen from Lethbridge, so I think we got to give that props right off the bat.
The top hat in Lethbridge. Hey, Rob, are you in Lethbridge, buddy? I haven't.
We're contractually obligated. Anytime Jim Toth is on the show, of course, Jim is from Lethbridge. So anytime we have someone in the chat from Lethbridge, that comment gets to go right to the front of the queue.
Well, you can tell, Rob, that I've yet to be at the Top Hat, but if you can get them as a sponsor on this program, you'd be doing very well. Very well. So say hi to everybody at the Top Hat in Lethbridge for me. I don't even know if it's still open, pandemic times, but say hi to everybody, Rob. Thanks for that. That's funny, Rob. Thanks. But yeah, I love everything about Morgan Barron because he was to take Andrew Kopp's spot on that third line. So you lost Andrew Kopp, and Andrew Kopp's having a rough year points-wise in Detroit. And that was my only issue with Andrew Kopp. I liked everything about him. But I didn't think he was a $5 to $6 million player. And on good teams, he can't be, because you can't be playing, top 9 guys that much money. So I wish Andrew Kopp all the best. I think he's a great player and stuff. But so they get Morgan Barron in here. Now, Morgan Barron has a long way to go offensively to get up to the Andrew Kopp production, but everything else is good. He's a good defender. He's big, he's physical. And I do think Appleton will go back on that line. Appleton's tough. It's 3 months. Like, I think that's why he's on the fourth line. He will eventually get to that third line, but he's going to want to, get his feet underneath him as well. It's a wrist injury, so he's going to want to work on the hand-eye coordination and everything else that comes with it. But I do think Mason Appleton going back on that line and having Morgan Barron here is a great acquisition. Would I prefer Andrew Kopp be there? Yes, I do. Do I prefer Morgan Barron's salary and what he brings compared to Andrew Kopp's salary? Yes, I do. I think that's how you're going to make things fit come this trade deadline and make it through this season. So, I really like that. And me, as I've been a guy for years, I think Adam Lowry has a 40-point season in him. And I think that for all the times that people have bashed Adam Lowry's offense, I think it's there. This is a guy who won WHL Player of the Year in Swift Current. and it was evenly split. It was 40 some goals and 40 some assists. So I'm not saying he's a perennial 50-point guy on the third line, which is always nice, but I do think he has a 40-point season in him, and I think it could come with a Barron and a Lowry there. Perfetti's played with him. So I really like that line. I think it's going to be a couple of games before we see Appleton on it, but once it does get in there, I would, and the thing I'm excited for, if and when they make the playoffs, is to see that Lowry, Barron, Appleton line in playoff hockey and where they can go. And to Tikona Pauly's idea of Stenlund, I've loved everything about Stenlund. I saw him play against Iowa about a month into the season in the Manitoba Moose. Hustler happened to be there, and I was like, who is this Blake Wheeler clone? Like, and he goes, don't you remember him from training camp? Everyone's like, is that Wheeler, 28? And I said, yeah. So I loved everything about his game in the Manitoba and Moose game. And the reason I like him with the Jets is, I think he's effective. I think he's a really good fourth line center. Defends well, big, physical, and I think he's got offensive upside. But he's played for the Jets the same way he played that game I saw him play in the Manitoba Moose. His game doesn't change. It's pretty consistent. So I think Stenlund's a great addition too. But man, Barron, Lowry, Appleton, if they all stay healthy in a playoff round, I think I'm a big believer in a 7-game series. Your third line doesn't have to be the difference in the series, but they have to be the difference in a game. And I think that third line could be.
I would agree with that 100%, Jim. And then the big unknown is, as we talked about earlier, and we'll get into maybe a little bit here. I mentioned to you about this earlier. Another guy that I think would be an interesting pickup, and I'm not sure if he's going to re-sign, is Tyler Bertuzzi. And that's, again, going back to what we talked about. That's the unknown. Are the Jets going to bring in a top 6/top 9 winger? And I think Tyler Bertuzzi is a guy, that's interesting. And I'm sure, people in the chat are going to have their opinions. We're going to leave the vaccination status alone here for a second, because I believe that doesn't apply anymore. I think he'd be able to freely travel. I don't think that's something that was talked about, a year ago or 2 years ago. But Timo Meier is obviously, the guy that most Jets fans want right now, right? Like, if you look at, the TSN trade bait board or the daily face-off trade bait board, Timo Meier's, either one or two. He's the obvious guy. Like, he's this year's Mark Stone, if you will, right? But Tyler Bertuzzi is a guy that, intrigues me, because, you would think that he would also be a rental, right? Like, he's a pending UFA. I have his salary up here. I think he makes, he's not going to cost you too much. I believe he's at 4.75. There you go. Brought it up here. 27 years old, left winger. He's not having a great year, Jim, but it's interesting about Tyler Bertuzzi. The Wings obviously haven't had a very good season. He's broken both hands blocking shots. So it's been a very, unfortunate situation for him. He's only played 19 games, but he's only got 6 points in those 19 games. He's got 2 goals and 4 assists, but he had a career high 30 goals and 62 points last year, and that was in 68 games. And it's been reported that the Red Wings would move him maybe for a prospect and a second-round pick. So I don't know necessarily that you have to give up a first-round pick, but that's what we've heard. Second-round pick and a prospect, might get you Tyler Bertuzzi. I'm not sure, if you're talking about a Chaz Lucius, if you're talking about a Ville Heinola, but I wanted to just get your opinion, Jim, on Tyler Bertuzzi, because this is a guy, again, his numbers don't stand out to you this year, but 30 goals, 62 points on a bad Red Wings team last year. Like, this guy can score goals, and he's gritty. Like, this is a guy that gets it on the forecheck. He's an agitator. So what are your thoughts on Bertuzzi and what the Jets might have to give up to get him?
I don't mind Tyler Bertuzzi as an idea. I always cringe, though, as when Steve Yzerman wants to get rid of somebody. I really do. And we saw that with Shirokov when he came here. I didn't mind his game here with the Jets, and I know he went on to San Jose. But I just, when Steve Yzerman doesn't want to get, now the difference this time might be Steve's built a really good team there. And I think they're on the cusp of being the Buffaloes or the New Jerseys over the next 2 seasons, like a playoff bound team with good young talent. So he could be looking to move things to add to that or make room for it overall with the depth of talent. But if Steve Yzerman wants to get rid of you, I always question like why that is. And I know you brought up the vaccination thing. I don't know if maybe that caused a rift with some of his teammates, not over the fact of what you believe around the vaccination, but just the fact that we're a team and we're trying to do some things and you're sort of taking a stand to not, and I'm just guessing, I don't know. But I do like Tyler Bertuzzi as a player. I think it would be something that would be interesting to acquire. But I just think if it's not going to be a big name, if it's not going to be Patrick Kane, if it's not going to be Timo Meier, then I think it's going to be more of the Van Riemsdykes, the Barbashevs, the Nick Ritchies. Tyler Bertuzzi, I think is a good addition and good player. What's his contract status again? Is he a UFA or he's got term on it?
This is Bertuzzi, Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bertuzzi's a pending UFA.
Yeah.
And we should mention that, you're right. I think you have to be a little bit concerned when Steve Yzerman isn't, champion at the bit to re-sign you. Dylan Larkin is a pending UFA. Dylan Larkin's the captain. I think everybody knows that Dylan Larkin's going to get, I don't know, $7 million a year, maybe more,
right.
$8 million a year. I'm not sure. Larkin's not going anywhere. So we had a comment up. I mean, the Jets aren't going to be able to acquire Dylan Larkin.
And Larkin
is a pending UFA, 4.75 AAV. So it's not going to cost you a ton.
Yeah, so and that's a rental, right? So
exactly.
Again, the Jets don't have a second, fourth, or sixth this year, so you can maybe send a second next year.
Right.
And I think a second round pick would get you a Bertuzzi. I think a second round pick would get you a James Van Riemsdyk. So I just pick your poison, and if somebody holds out for more, then I don't know if I would go first round pick for a rental. So. But I do like the Brinkat, by the way. But I don't think that's gonna cost you more trees. So here's the thing: it all circles back to, and I love having these discussions and throwing these names out and everything else. But here's the thing: do you want Cheveldayoff to overpay for a rental? No, you don't. Can he afford to overpay for a rental? No, it's not like other teams. It's not like other teams where you can get a free agent, every summer. That doesn't happen here. He has to be really careful with these prospects. Again, I do believe he's big game hunting. I do believe that if he can get somebody that will sign here on term, but I don't think he's going to just hand out a Chaz Lucius or a Rutger McGorry or a Ville Heinola and a first round pick for somebody that. So let's do this. Say it comes down to the deadline and somebody's offering 2 seconds and Chevy's offering a second next year and the third this year. And they come back and they say, who wants to give us the first round pick gets him. I just don't think Chevy does that. I don't think he does. And I think there is a team out there that would do that if they think they're close. So it's really interesting that the Jets and the West. Sarah made such a great point compared to 2018. Nobody thought the Jets would get past Nashville. Then when they got to Vegas, I thought they would get past Vegas, and they didn't. To go for it is different for this team than other teams.
100%.
And I don't have a problem with them going for it. And I think this year they should, but they have to do it logistically. They have to do it in a way that doesn't cripple them for years to come. So I just I look at the Calgary Flames and I see the Gaudreaus and the Chucks left. Tkachuk was like Dubois. He had another year left going into next year. What do you do? And it looked like on paper, they did the right thing. They've got some for assets that didn't want to be there. And so I look at Scheifele and Dubois and I look around the league and I see these Timo Meier names and stuff. It's just, and then there's a story that Toronto wants in on Meier and they'll figure it out later, which means the summer, right? And then they're hearing that the Jets might do the same. They might just acquire him and figure it out in the summer. I think the Jets can figure it out in the summer by going, who wants what I said, $8.5, $9 million. And if none of the three want it, or one of them does, that's the guy you go with, and then you trade the other two and build around that. But what if none of them want it? And so you send out that Rutger McGorry, you send out Ville Heinola, you send out a first-round pick, and you send out something else. You get Meier, you get to the Stanley Cup final, but lose to Boston. And then all of a sudden, Scheifele's not re-signing, Dubois is not re-signing, Meier's not re-signing. What do you do then? And so then you got to make some deals and stuff. So I do think there's work to be done, and there are some deals happening. I do think they will be in on the Meier and the other big names. But what I think will actually happen is that he won't overpay. And what he'll do is he'll pay fair price for adding to this roster and going at it from there.
I agree with you 100%, Jim. And to your point earlier, Chevy rarely loses trades, right? Like you could go back and, you could point to, I don't know, Kevin Hayes is maybe one that you would point to that wasn't the best trade. But I would say, 80 to 90% of Chevy's trades have been won by the Jets and Cheveldayoff, right? So I agree with you 100%.
Well, and he just can't, I'm looking at Florida, and they have no first round picks for 3 years, and they're on the decline now, and they're overpaying their goaltender and stuff. But do I think Florida can fix this in 3 to 5 years? Yeah, I do, because it's Florida. You know what I mean? And if the Flames or if the Jets are in the same boat, do I think the Jets could fix it in 3 to 5 years? No, I don't. I think they'd have to go through the draft again. I think they'd have to get some pieces in here, develop those pieces. And so, again, I just keep going back to Meyer's going to want to come here, and he's got to want to sign an extension. And if I'm Timo Meier, I want to know what this top six is going to look like over the next 3 to 5 years. And there's 3 pieces in it, and your Vezina caliber goaltender that don't have contracts past 1 year. So, and people say this to me, if Scheifele can sign for $8.5 million, then I think you do it. But I don't know that he's going to want to sign for that. I don't, and the Jets need to, right?
It's a big unknown right now, right?
But I do believe that, like, the idea of people thinking that they're going to get $11 million, like, I think that was probably the problem with Laine. Laine was, sitting there looking at Austin Matthews and the thing being done in Toronto. It was $10, $11 million, and you can't do that. And I think that's why Horvat took 8.5. I think that's why we're hearing about Timo Meier from his agent saying he knows he's going to make $10 million next year, one way or the other. He also knows he's not going to make $10 million on an extension contract. So he's more than willing to sign not the $10 million next year, but a long-term $8.5, $9 million, because that's the rate, right? Why did Bo Horvat sign in Long Island? I don't like Long Island's team. I don't like the Islanders going forward. I look at them over the next 3 to 5 years, and I'm like, they're not going to beat the Bostons and the Tampa Bays and the Torontos of the world in the playoffs, or the Carolinas. But he signed for $8.5 million. On a team that I don't really like. But Meier could do it differently. Meier could go, if I go to Carolina, if I go to Boston, if I go to New Jersey, I think they're going to be good for the next 3 to 5 years. I'm not saying the Jets aren't going to be good. We here in the city are questioning what it's going to look like after next year. So I can understand why pending UFA would as well.
And we definitely don't know who the Jets are going to acquire. Is it going to be Timo Meier? Is it going to be Tyler Bertuzzi? Is it going to be Vladislav Gavrikov? But we don't know. But the one thing that we do know is that Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times is waiting. We're going to bring him on. We're going to go to commercial break right now. But when we come back, we're going to continue to preview the Jets and the Blackhawks. Puck drop, very normal, 9:00 p.m. start time when all hockey games should start. We're lucky that we have Jets hockey to talk about. So we're going to head to commercial break, and then we come back. Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times is going to join us to preview tonight's game between the Jets and Chicago. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. I'm Ezra Ginsburg, joined by my handsome co-host Jim Toth of 680 CJOB, filling in for Drew Mandel and Dave Minuk. And we are very happy to be joined by Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times. Ben, thank you so much. You were patiently waiting in our backstage area there for 4 or 5 minutes. So thanks so much for joining us and being patient as this amateur host tries to figure out this whole StreamYard thing.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me on. I normally would be at this game, but back to back, a 9 p.m. start, and it's going to have to connect through Toronto, so it didn't work out. So you're giving me something to do with my day.
Absolutely love it. We can talk, have a nice chat about the Jets and the Blackhawks, and we were talking about this earlier. And this was a game that Jets fans were circling back in October, Ben, because you look at it and you're like 9:00 for a home game, and obviously there's TV implications. There's going to be an early game on Sportsnet. It's on Hockey Night in Canada tonight. So there's definitely going to be some well-lubricated Jets fans in attendance tonight, some people drinking. And I don't know how many kids are going to be at the game because it's not going to end until close to 11:30, 11:45 Central Time. But I think Jets fans are just happy to have a hockey game because it's been almost 2 weeks here since the Jets have played. So some of the players have gone to Mexico. Nick Ehlers went to Denmark. But we're just happy to have a game to talk about. And the Blackhawks were in action last night. They defeated the Arizona Coyotes, kind of like a mini Super Bowl, if you will. Blackhawks and Coyotes, I think I would say, being a little bit tongue-in-cheek here. But, I mean, Ben, what's the vibe around this team? Because I think, there's a lot of talk about Patrick Kane being traded, a lot of talk about Jonathan Toews being traded. He wasn't in action last night. He's not going to play tonight unless I'm wrong. Let's just start off with that. What's been going on with Toews? Is it just like a flu, or is there something else to it?
Well, Luke Richardson, the Blackhawks coach, had said, I think it was Thursday, that it was the flu. But then yesterday that I think actually it's Wednesday and Thursday here that we're talking about that he actually hadn't asked him if it was the flu. So it's a little bit up in the air exactly what he's dealing with. Obviously, the big concern is whether this is connected to the immune system issue that caused him to miss the entire 2021 season. And tonight will be his 5th game missed due to illness since the start of December. He also missed one back on December 6th in New Jersey, and then a couple weeks ago in Calgary. So, and now these past 3 games. So, yeah, definitely a little bit of a concern there in terms of what's going on with his health. I know I talked to him, I guess it was maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago at this point about it, and he basically, by virtue of not really answering the question, indicated that he wasn't feeling great. But he hasn't really described exactly what he's dealing with or, what it's stemming from. So definitely a bit of a concern there, but the Hawks are hoping to have him back this coming week. They're hoping that he'll be able to join the team after getting a few more workouts and skates in Chicago. So that's the Toews status. As far as Kane, he's been pretty open about sort of his deliberations on whether to approach the Blackhawks and ask for a trade. He was not happy to see the Rangers acquire Vladimir Tarasenko because I think that's long sort of been considered his preferred landing destination, and now they're out of the running for him. And it's interesting to see a guy who's still playing for a different team openly lamenting that a different team can no longer fit him in. So it seems like he's leaning towards the trade direction, but he admitted that he hasn't yet gone to GM Kyle Davidson with that request, and that's probably going to be figured out within the next 10 days or so. So that's how it's going with the 2 veterans. But in terms of on the ice, the Blackhawks have actually been playing probably their best hockey the past month or so. I think they went 7-5 in January, and they're 1-0-1 since coming out of the break this past week. They've definitely been playing better. Not that was a very high bar to clear considering what we saw from them in November and December, but they seem to be figuring out the system a little bit and finding a little bit of chemistry. And some of the depth players like Jason Dickinson and Sam Lafferty have really turned it on offensively, which has helped a lot. And then they've gotten some pretty good goaltending. That's been one positive most of the year. So that's kind of the overall state of the team right now.
That's interesting, Ben. I know there's a lot of Toews and Blackhawks fans here that are so disappointed because they honestly thought that this would be their last time to see him in Winnipeg in a Blackhawks uniform. And if he keeps playing for another team or something, they just were telling me that would be different than seeing him with the C on the Blackhawks team. But Kane is interesting to me because I heard his comments over a week ago where he said, I'll decide around the deadline what I want to do. And I thought, why would you publicly say that, and why would you even privately go about it this way? This has been an ongoing process the entire season, and if you want to go somewhere, you can dictate that to a certain extent. And I understand maybe weighing the fact of being a lifelong Blackhawk compared to not, but as we got closer and around Christmas time, I was a little surprised. And then, as you said, his comments this week, I kind of felt like saying, well, Patrick, what did you think would happen? Like it kind of maybe, but to speak about it this openly, I'm wondering how this is around the team, because we talk, at least here in Canada, about Kane and Toews for the entire season. What we don't talk about is the McCabe's that might be traded, the other assets that other teams might like. So I'm wondering what, just this past week has been like around this roster, because as you said, I think they in that 7-5 run won 5 in a row and playing well. I can't think of a team personally that is going through more public and private transition during a season than this Blackhawks team.
Yeah, that's certainly true. And I think with a lot of teams, this would probably be a period of a lot of instability and maybe guys kind of walking on eggshells. But I feel like because of how obvious it was from the very start that this is what the Blackhawks were doing this season, it really hasn't seemed to affect the mood in the locker room or really different guys. I think everybody knew what they were getting into. Someone asked actually Luke Richardson that very question the past few days, and he said that he was told day one of the interview last summer that they would be trading a lot of guys. So I think everyone's kind of known that this was coming and been able to sort of mentally prepare for it. And it doesn't seem to have really disrupted things that much, even though there are probably 9 or 10 guys who could realistically think that they might get traded. So yeah, it's honestly the whole season the team has done pretty well mentally handling everything that they've gone through between multiple 8-game losing streaks and just all the transition going on. The fact that management has kind of openly declared they don't want to win. There'd be a lot of things that most teams would maybe get discouraged by, and this group has done pretty well of maintaining a good mood and some unity and kind of trying their best to work through it. even though that they know they're sort of destined to fail. So definitely kudos to them for that. And I think, you're right, McCabe and Lafferty and a bunch of different guys, Murphy, Domi, Athanasiou, in addition to Kane and Taves, of course, are part of rumors, but they seem to just be kind of taking it one day at a time, as they like to say, and not really letting it affect things too much.
We're joined by Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jets and Blackhawks tonight at 9:00 p.m. Central at Canada Life Center. And, Ben, you mentioned earlier, that the Blackhawks have arguably been playing, their best hockey of the year. So are Blackhawks fans actually hating that? Because, you hear like teams like the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Anaheim Ducks, like the other teams that are in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. I guess you would throw in the Arizona Coyotes, or the Blackhawks beat last night. But is that, like, I guess players, as you know, they want to win hockey games. I mean, they're built to win and compete. So it's not like they're going to say that, they don't want to win. Nobody's saying that. But I guess, how badly do Blackhawks fans want Connor Bedard, or are they aware that, there's some really there's a lot of other good players, I should say, that are available in that first round top 5, right? Like, we know the names Adam Fantilli, Leo Carlson, I guess Zach Benson, who plays for the Ice here in Winnipeg. I guess the question is, how bad do the Hawks want Bedard, or is it just the idea that they know they're going to get a top pick?
I would say they want him pretty bad. I think a lot of teams could say that at this point, but it doesn't seem like there's been too much animosity about the winning. There are a few fans I see out there that they get upset about winning, but I think a lot of them just appreciate in the moment having a little bit of something to cheer for, and know that it's not really a single win or a few wins isn't really changing that much. Some of the other bottom feeders have been winning a bit more lately, and so the Hawks are still in 31st place, I think 2 or 3 points ahead of Columbus. And if they get rid of a bunch of guys at the deadline, they could conceivably really fall apart in March and April. So I think there's still a very good shot of ending up in last place, even though they've been playing better. So that's a little bit of solace. And I think a lot of fans are just, if they haven't tuned out the season completely, which seems to be a frequent case, they are enjoying at least having a bit of success, and kind of enjoying that, and maybe seeing a few guys emerge as someone that they could potentially stay and keep as part of the rebuild and build around for the future. So those are positives, and I think most people are trying to appreciate those, even though objectively each win does do a little tiny bit of damage to their odds of getting Bedard. And the other thing is, the other critical part of finishing in last is that with the lottery odds not really being that great, it guarantees a top 3 pick, because even if you don't win either lottery for first or second, you slide to third, and then you can still get Carlson or whoever it would be, Michkov, maybe, if they want to take a risk in that position. So that is the benefit to finishing last, whereas if you're in 30th or 31st, it's possible to fall to 4th or 5th and then get kind of the second tier guy. So, but it's just going to, there's still a long time left, and all those teams down at the bottom kind of move positions constantly. So we'll see how it pans out.
That's the interesting part of when there's a Bedard in a draft, is that people get so disappointed if they don't get that first pick and forget that there's plenty of quality in this year's draft coming in 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 as well. When you said that about Richardson, man, I remember when he was hired, and I thought, oh, he's such a good coach, and he finally gets a chance, and he's going to get fired within 2 years. But then I started reading, including some of your work, about the fact that he knew what he was getting into, and this is a chance, maybe in a weird position on a bad team, to take over the reins and have a long-term career with an organization and see it built. How instrumental has he been to this season, given everything that's been going on? Because I think he's a really good coach on and off the ice.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's done a terrific job. He's been really impressive just in terms of the systems he's put in. I think have really gotten the most out of a pretty poorly constructed roster. And I think even though the Hawks objectively want to get the first pick, that's a major positive that they have a coach who can get this much out of a team like this. Just the tactical changes he's made, and the timing of them too, to know when to make a tweak or when the team is ready to add in a little extra twist onto something they've already been working on. It's been pretty well orchestrated, and I think off the ice too, he's been good at communication. He's been honest. He's been harsh when needed, but he doesn't kind of lose his cool or start kind of throwing things or anything like that, because that just kind of, it loses its impact over time. You don't want to waste that on a season like this. So I think he's really handled the whole situation well. I too, at the last summer when he was hired, thought that this was going to be an almost impossible job, but it hasn't turned out to be that way in terms of at least how he's made it look. So I think he's done a very good job. He certainly benefited from the fact that there are literally zero expectations. It would be almost impossible to disappoint, considering the circumstances. So I'm sure in a few years, as they're hoping to show improvement and get up into the playoff bubble and everything, there will be some more challenging times where maybe people are a little bit more upset about how things are going, just because that's how hockey works. But up to this point, he's done really as good a job as anyone could have hoped.
We're joined by Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jets and Blackhawks tonight at 9 o'clock. That's right, 9 o'clock p.m. Central Time. It's still going to be weird for me, even weeks later, Ben, the fact that there's a home game at 9 o'clock, but I'll get over it. It's just going to be late tuck-in tonight. But just continuing with the trade deadline, right? Because 21 days left before the trade deadline, March 3rd. And we talked about Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews, but I guess what I wanted to get to was, you mentioned Sam Lafferty, and you wrote about him, I believe it was Wednesday, if not Thursday, for the Chicago Sun-Times. And this is a guy that, every time the Hawks play the Jets, even though the Jets have, handled the Hawks pretty well this year, 14 goals for, 3 against. Lafferty's a guy that stands out. And I don't think anybody's expecting a Brandon Hagel type of return here. And in your article, you wrote that, there's always a chance, the Hawks continue with Lafferty, and he's part of the post rebuild, as you called it. But I guess, how attractive is it that he's got that 1 year left on his contract for $1.1 or $1.2 million? Because that seems like that's got to be really attractive for some NHL GMs.
Yeah, and obviously he's not as good of a player as Hagel, and he's older, so that comparison isn't true. But in terms of the cost certainty that he brings, I think that's a big factor in his value, like it was for Hagel. Even though they're in different circumstances otherwise. The thing is that Lafferty came in mid last season in a trade from Pittsburgh for Alex Nylander, and really he played pretty well down the stretch. I'm not sure that the Hawks knew what they were going to do with him, and he definitely earned this second contract with them. But he wasn't really that productive, at least on paper, even though he seemed to be playing pretty well and was one of their more noticeable guys in March and April. I think he only had 11 points in 40-something games with the Hawks. So the contract ended up being, barely above minimum, very cheap. Well, this year, he's played well again, but he's getting the production to show for it. In January, he averaged almost a point per game. And he's been pretty good these first 2 games in February too. So that's really sort of made him, I think, get a little more attention around the league, and made this contract quickly turn out to be an undervalue of him, which is obviously great for the Blackhawks, whether they keep him or trade him. In terms of what he brings, I mean, he's been a really strong penalty killer. He has 3 shorthanded goals. But his speed is what really makes a difference. I think Athanasiou is the guy on this team that gets the most attention for his skating ability and his speed. But Lafferty is right up there with him, and is arguably smarter about using it. It doesn't just sort of recklessly charge ahead all the time, but is pretty much automatic with zone entries going down the wing with this. They've moved him to center recently, and he's been really good there, kind of driving play and using it to just make a difference in all areas of the ice. So he brings a unique skill set. He's certainly not going to be, a top 6 scorer, but he can fill a bunch of different roles, and pretty versatile. And obviously, like you said, he comes at a very low salary cap price tag. So I could definitely see him being appealing to a contender out there that's looking to kind of just shore up one little hole in their lineup. It's going to be interesting to see what the return for him is. Luke Richardson recently compared him to Josh Anderson, which was kind of interesting to me, and which I wrote about there because, Anderson was coming off that really awful season in 2019-20 when the Canadians decided to trade a second-round pick and coincidentally Max Domi for him, and way more than anyone expected. And is Lafferty going to get that much? Is he going to get a second-round pick and an existing player? Probably not, but it could kind of fit the same model in terms of a guy that maybe gets more than a lot of people would figure just because of the kind of style that he plays. So it'll be interesting if he is traded to see what he gets.
I did want to ask you quickly, I know we're running out of time, but you mentioned Max Domi, and a lot of people are asking us about him in the Jets uniform. Would they acquire him? And then some people in my discussions we've been having about why he's having such a good year in Chicago. And I just think that of the maybe 5 or 6 games I've seen him play this year and the couple against the Jets, is he just looks like he's matured. Like he just looks like any compliment you can give a player, no matter what you do or what your job is on the ice, is to be consistent. It looks like he's matured into a nice, consistent player. What have you seen from him this year?
Yeah, he has had a good season for sure. He's definitely exceeded the expectations coming in. It sounds like he just maybe wasn't in the best place in Columbus. Just didn't really work out fit-wise for him, and he just maybe didn't have his normal attitude or his normal kind of feisty energy. And he's found that again in Chicago, which has been good to see. He's been certainly given a lot of opportunity. He's been the first-line center most of the year. He's been at second line the past few weeks, but he's their leading scorer, and he does have occasional bouts of kind of what are you doing moments, but for the most part, he really does bring a lot of energy and has been very productive offensively, and has been terrific on faceoffs, which has kind of come out of the blue. That wasn't really a strength of his up until this season. So I think if the Hawks do trade him, they'd love to get maybe a second-round pick. I think his value has increased up to that point. But it's also possible they keep him and maybe give him a 2 or 3 year contract to kind of keep him around as sort of a leader through this rebuild. He's expressed a willingness to do that. He seems to be really enjoying himself, even though the team hasn't had a lot of success. And they are going to have to get to the salary floor somehow after Kane and Taves leave. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him stay. But if he does go, I think he could bring a lot to another team. I think even last year we saw him make a difference for Carolina in the playoffs, and that was at the tail end of a much worse season for him. So I think it's exciting, I'm sure, for other teams to think about what he might be able to bring when he comes in with this kind of momentum.
And even though there's a lot of Jets fans that would love to see Patrick Kane or Jonathan Taves in a Winnipeg Jets jersey, I think there's also quite a few Jets fans that would like to see Max Domi in a Jets jersey because, of course, his dad played for the Jets 1.0. And if you go back to that 2013 draft, Ben, he was taken right before Josh Morrissey, right? He was 12th overall, if I'm not mistaken, by the Hawks, and then Morrissey went 13th. So Morrissey's having a pretty good year, but I think, if you go back, he could have easily been drafted by the Jets, right? So I think, Max Domi is an interesting one. It's fascinating to me what the Chicago Blackhawks are going to do because, clearly we know they're in the Connor Bedard sweepstakes. They're not making the playoffs, and there's going to be moves. It's just a question of which guys get moved. And as you mentioned, whether they're going to finish, 31st or 32nd. So we appreciate you coming on. Before we let you go, though, we obviously have to ask for your Super Bowl 57 prediction. I'm not sure if you have a rooting interest between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles, but what are you thinking that's going to happen in tomorrow's game?
I don't have a rooting interest. I mean, it's going to be a great game, I think. I think I'll pick the Eagles, honestly. I feel like Mahomes has been a little hobbled. Maybe it won't be 100%, and they've really dominated so much of the season. I feel like Jalen Hurts was pretty good for my fantasy team, so maybe I'm a little bit biased with that. But yeah, I'll pick Philly.
I don't know if you knew this, Ben, but Jim is a big Bears fan. So we know that Jim doesn't really care who wins this game, but should get that in there that Jim is a proud Chicago Bears fan.
Yeah, I was going to wrap this up, and you joined us on our 680 CJOB pregame show a couple of weeks ago, and now that you're joining us here on Illegal Curve, I fully expect the Chicago Sun-Times suite at a Bears game eventually. See you there, and feel free to invite me anytime.
I've never even been to a Bears game myself. I got to be honest; it's been pretty bleak for them ever since I moved here. So.
That's all good. I think I'm our good buddy Andrew Hustler Patterson, who does the Winnipeg Sports Talk show. He's a big Chiefs fan, so for that reason alone, I'm cheering for the Chiefs. But as we talked about earlier, I'm more so excited for the Rihanna halftime show. So, but we'll hopefully get a good game tomorrow. Super Bowl is always fun. So Ben, thanks so much for joining us. You can read Ben's work in the Chicago Sun-Times, the Jets and Hawks, 9:00 Central. You're gonna have to read that work late. But it's still going to be available in the Chicago Sun-Times. So Ben, thank you so much for joining us, and enjoy the game tonight. Enjoy the trade deadline and the rest of the season.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thanks
man.
for having me. I appreciate it.
Take care.
You're welcome. Big thanks to Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times for joining us. We've only got a few minutes left here, Jim, so why don't we get back to tonight's game? I think, we haven't talked a lot about the different line combinations, everything like that. I think really the only big change that we're expecting is Mason Appleton. Jets game day skates getting underway in a few minutes, so we're not going to be able to provide you too many updates, but you're going to be able to get lots of updates today on 680 CJOB. You're going to get lots of updates through the Winnipeg Free Press, the Winnipeg Sun, and various media outlets. Connor Hellebuyck obviously gets the start tonight, Jim. I don't think anybody's expecting David Riddick.
Yeah, I would expect that. People wonder why I keep looking down. I got the lines that you sent, and from yesterday's practice, of course, they align Scheifele with Ehlers and Wheeler, Dubois with Connor and Perfetti, Lowry with Kuhlman and Barron, and Stenlund with Menelainen and Appleton. Appleton coming back in the lineup on the fourth line, as we discussed. We do expect him to go up. Morrissey, Pionk, Sandberg, Dillon, Stanley, Schmidt, and Capobianco is the extra D-man. It's interesting, as this Dylan DeMello injury is something like I think the Jets were looking to see over the last month if Neil Pionk could improve some of his overall play. And Neil Pionk spoke to that about a week prior to the break about wanting to get his game back rounded out. And we all remember how he handled Connor McDavid in that playoff series, and looking at that. That's why I think they're shopping D-men as well, as if Pionk can get back his game or if they need to add somebody. But if this Dylan DeMello injury is something that's lingering, especially if he's, not back now. Now, Rick Bowness said he does expect him. He was hoping to be back now, but he said he does expect him to at least start skating with the team on Monday. Keep an eye on that. If he doesn't go into this week and we're 2 weeks away from the trade deadline, that's a big piece too. But that looks like the lineup tonight. And again, we'll see what the rush shakes off. And of course, we all remember how they went into the break with Morrissey sort of willing that win. Once he got that first goal for the team, and
let's F and go, Jim. Let's F and go.
Let's get something done here. So I'm excited for the next 30 games. I'm excited for what the team will do by the trade deadline or prior, but it all gets started tonight and should be an interesting one.
Absolutely. And when you talk about the look of these lines, I mean, I think Carson Kuhlman, who they acquired from the Kraken, who of course the Jets play on Tuesday night, Valentine's Day. That's what I'll be doing for Valentine's Day. I'm not going to be spending any time with Naomi. I'm going to be watching the Jets Kraken game and then doing the Illegal Curve post-game show with all you fine folks.
The hockey schedule has saved me on many Valentine's Day.
Yeah, no, we'll still get our significant others flowers
some
and
look
chocolate.
At the Christmas break, some look at this. I'm like, do they play on Valentine's Day?
Yeah, absolutely. And so Carson Kuhlman, I think, just quickly has done an admirable job on the third line, but you expect Mason Appleton to eventually reclaim his position on that third line, because you go back to, the first couple months of the season and you had Lowry and Appleton starting overtimes, right? Like, let's not forget about that,
Yeah.
right? Like, Appleton was arguably playing the best hockey of his NHL career. And I think there's a strong argument, Jim, don't get me wrong, to be made that, Appleton, going into the playoffs and in the playoffs, you'd rather have Appleton on the fourth line, and then you'd rather augment that top nine that we've talked about so much with whoever, the Jets end up acquiring. We expect them to acquire a top nine forward, but, I think Carson Kuhlman if he's your 13th forward, then that's great. If he's on your fourth line, or if it's David Gustafson playing center or wing, I agree with you. I think Kevin Stenlund is a guy that has really impressed. And it's not like there's been a sag in his play. Like, this guy brings it. He's good in the face-off circle, kills penalties. He's got hustle. He's got physicality. He's not necessarily a power forward, but I think Stenlund, at the very least, stays in your top 12, whether it's center and wing. Figure out what you got to do with Gus Bus. I agree with what you said earlier about Dylan DeMello, right? Like, if he doesn't play Tuesday night, we're not expecting him to miss too much time. But for now, Logan Stanley, he's missed a lot of time. He's getting some playing time along with Dylan Sandberg. And when DeMello eventually comes back, it is going to be between Stanley and Dylan Sandberg. And I think, we could have that debate here right now, whether, Sandberg is really your sixth best defenseman, or if it's Logan Stanley, or if it's Ville Heinola. But right now he's with the Manitoba Moose, and it looks like he's staying there for now. But how is Dylan DeMello's injury going to impact what Chevy might do, bringing in a top four defenseman? Like, I've said this for weeks now, and I'm sure you've talked about this with Cameron Poitras on Jets at Noon, and you've talked about this, on other outlets. Like, I think still going into the playoffs, I think the Jets have a good group of 7 or 8 defensemen, but I think, Neil Pionk's struggles still worry me. And I'm not saying that Neil Pionk doesn't have a role on this team. I think he's absolutely, a member of the Jets. I'm not saying he should be traded or anything like that, but Pionk hasn't been as good as he was a few years back. And I think, Josh Morrissey has absolutely, along with Dylan DeMello, who's the Jets' best defensive defenseman, I think those two guys have really been carrying the decor. And Brendan Dillon's had a good year and everything like that. And I think Dylan Sandberg's had a good year. But I do, look at that right side and, I wonder, if you can bring in a top 4 defenseman and then let's say Neil Pionk becomes a third pairing defenseman, because let's not forget, Toby Enstrom was a 6th or 7th defenseman back in 2018. The buff, Trouba, Sherratt, Myers year, right? So, and then you brought in, who's it, Joe Morrow, they brought him in. So he was kind of the 7th, 8th defenseman. But so that's something to keep an eye on, right? You've got a tough game on Tuesday night versus Seattle. Then, you've got Columbus. But then you look ahead a week and you've got those games on the East Coast, right? The Islanders, the Devils, I forget who else they play, the Hurricanes. So that's absolutely something to keep an eye on. Whether Dylan DeMello is back for Tuesday night's game. He's not going to play tonight because, of course, he hasn't been participating in full team practice. And David Gustafson, I believe, is also due back quite soon. So it's got to be a little bit concerning, not necessarily against the Blackhawks, Jim, but when you go up against a team like the Kraken, and then into the harder part of the schedule on the road on the East Coast against teams like the Devils and the Islanders. I think they play the Islanders twice in a week or something like that. So that's when I would be a little bit more concerned. But I think, tonight, going into this game, getting back to the Jets and Hawks tonight, sure, the Blackhawks might be a little bit upset that they've been pumped by the Jets 3 games in a row, but especially on the second game of a back-to-back, even if the first period is just awful, Jim, I expect, I would put the over-under Jets goals tonight, I don't know, at 6.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Like, I think this is a game they're going to win 5-2, 6-3, something like that. I could very easily see the Blackhawks getting the first goal of the game and going from there. But as much as there is going to be rust and it's going to be a little sloppy in that first period, I just think it's a matter of time before the Jets also have been chomping at the bit and they needed a break. They got it. It's a long one. I also think that they're amped up to play and they want to get going here. So I do think they get a win tonight and they should, quite honestly. The Pionk discussion and the DeMello is interesting, but it's like any other position. As in my opinion, like it's not a knock on a player if you find somebody better. And yes, Pionk has had a rough season, but if you could bring in a Chychrun, say, you do it. Like it's not a question at all. So I think that that's something that Kevin Cheveldayoff will be looking at. And whatever this injury is, how I look at injuries is like Appleton. We knew the schedule. We think he could have played before. They gave him the extra break, and that was done. That you see that. The way I look at injuries and what raise my eyebrow and have question marks is when you hope they'll be back by then and then they're not. You expect them to be back by a certain time and it's taking longer. That's when I'm always worried about injuries. So I think Monday's practice with DeMello is a very fascinating one. If he can get on the ice and take in a practice, he doesn't have to play Tuesday. But if he can get on the ice this week and start practicing again, then it's a bit of a sigh of relief for me. If he does not get on the ice Monday or Wednesday, I think that sort of puts a little bit more pressure on it as well. Do I fear going into the playoffs with Sandberg and Stanley? No. Do I think you could improve that with some simple moves? Yes, I do. I think Sandberg's on this team. Stanley's been up and down. I like Stanley as a player. I think he's a good, fine 5'6" D-man. But if you can improve on that, I think you should do it. So we had David Pagnotta on the show from the fourthperiod.com this week, and we were asking him about Chychrun. I mentioned the fact that I sat at a game this year in the press box. It was a game against Florida, and the entire Arizona Coyotes brass was there, including Marc Bergevin, who's now working for them since leaving as a GM in Montreal. And I keep hearing the assets they want for Chychrun is 4. They're trying to get 2 for the player, and they're trying to get 2 for the fact that he makes $4.6 million in the contract. So I don't know if you could ship a Pionk and a Heinola and a pick and get Chychrun. I think you do it. The problem is what we're hearing and Pagnotta was telling us was that it's another asset on top of that is taking so long on the Chychrun. So, but that being said, hey, they're back on the ice tonight. They get some games this week. We'll see where they're at, see where health is at, and watch for any moves they might make to try and improve this roster.
We should mention, Jim, that Bailey, our unofficial or maybe official IC intern, is mentioning that Dylan DeMello is a non-contact. So no surprise there, right?
Yeah.
There won't be Dylan DeMello tonight, but there will be Mason Appleton back in the lineup almost 3 months after being out of the lineup. And we have the Jets and the Blackhawks, as you mentioned. This is exciting that it's a Jets game day because it's almost 2 weeks, and we're excited to have a Jets game to watch, even if it's going to be a little bit late.
I was talking about this with Kelly Moore, and he's been at it a lot longer than me, but in my 28 years of covering hockey at 4 different levels, I've never had this much of a break. And I'm actually kind of disappointed in myself. I didn't have the foresight to look into this because it is the longest break I've ever had in a season when covering hockey. So 11 days is a long time. It'll be good to talk some hockey again. The only thing that saved us, as you probably know on this show, is there's plenty of trade talk going around during the break compared to other years.
Absolutely, and it gave us a chance to watch the entire White Lotus series, right, Jim? So, I mean, yes, that was a bonus as well, and also let's not forget the Pamela Anderson movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. But
I did, yes,
we want there to be Jets hockey back on the airwaves. So, Jim, that's going to do it for us.
I got in that 3-hour No Time to Die James Bond movie during the break too, because I never have time for a 3-hour movie, so that I watched.
Absolutely, yeah, you got to fill the time somehow, right? When you don't have Jets hockey for a couple of weeks, you got to catch up on your Netflix and your Disney Plus. But that's going to do it for us. Jim, thanks so much for joining us. Like Drew and Dave, obviously, enjoying some vacation time down in the USA. They'll be back. Drew's going to join me tonight on the Jets Illegal Curve post-game show. It's going to take place at roughly 11:45, quarter to midnight. And of course, also tune in to the CJOB pregame show beginning at 7 o'clock. And of course, the CJOB broadcast, and then the post-game hosted by Kelly Moore. So, Jim, thanks so much for joining us. I want to give a big thanks to our guest, Sarah Orlesky of the Winnipeg Jets, joined us in the first hour, and then Ben Pope of the Chicago Sun-Times joined us about 20 minutes ago. I want to give a big shout out to our sponsors of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show as well, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Betway, Dr. Les Rikus, and the team at Linden Market Dental Center, Grid Park, Tough Duck, Boston Pizza, the good folks at Rolly's Transfer, the Keg, Zappia Group Realty, and Seagram's. I got the Fireball 2 on right now. Haven't had any Fireball yet, as it's 10 after 11 in the morning. But
long day, you will.
Yeah, it's a long day. We might have to pull that out on the post.
By the way, thanks for having me. And before I go, you did an amazing job on that painting behind you. You're very talented.
I appreciate it. That's what people don't know. I like to do murals. I like to do oil on canvas.
That was done during the break, I think. It took you 3 days. Well done, Ed.
I just whip things up very quickly. But okay, before we sign off, because it's, as I mentioned, it's 10 after 11. We've gone a little bit late here, but we did start a little bit late. We started 7 or 8 minutes late. We got to get your Super Bowl 57 preview. Pardon me, the prediction, Jim, because I know that you're a big Bears guy, but I know that you have a favorite here. So are you going Chiefs or Eagles tomorrow?
Well, I'm like Ben Pope. I had Jalen Hurts on my fantasy team this year, and he was amazing. I just look, I like the Chiefs. I think they're a great organization. There's so many good storylines with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid, and of course, Hustler, a good friend. But that's probably why I wasn't invited to Vegas this weekend, because I'm going with the Eagles. I just think the Eagles defense, I don't know, as many as the weapons as the Chiefs have, I don't think they can hold off this defense. But it's going to be a great game because it's the number one offense versus the number one defense. I question the Kansas City O-line with that D-line of the Eagles. And then on the offensive side, I question the Chiefs defense. I think Jalen Hurts is one of those athletes that I think Josh Allen, as great as he is for the Buffalo Bills as a quarterback, can sometimes, look nervous in playoff games when they get down and stuff. I think Jalen Hurts is more of an athlete like Michael Vick. Like when the big lights shine, he gets better. I know he didn't have a dynamic game last in the conference championship, but he has been injured. I think Jalen Hurts steps up. I think the Eagles offense has just as many weapons and can do some damage, just like the Chiefs offense can. So I'm going with the Eagles, and I'm going by 10 points. I think they win by 10 or 13 points.
I like it. I just hope we get a good game. And I think that's what most people are hoping for, right, Jim? We just want to.
It'll be a good game. I don't think it's going to be a dud.
And then what you got to love, though, is that, these are both the best teams record-wise from the regular season, right? Both 14-3. So there really isn't an underdog. So Jim's going with the Eagles, and I'm going with the Chiefs just because of Huss. Huss is a big Chiefs fan. I love Huss. He's my brother. And I hope he has a great time down in Vegas and he enjoys the game. And obviously, we're going to enjoy Rihanna.
Well, one thing we know for sure, Huss has never not had a great time in Vegas. So unless the Chiefs lose, this will be the first one.
And I told Huss, Dave Minuk is in Vegas. We've revealed his secret identity. So he was in Vegas last weekend, and he's in Vegas this. I don't know.
He has a second home.
I don't know what Dave's doing. Yeah, how do we get this Dave Minuk lifestyle where we get to go to Vegas? The only place I'm going tonight, is my basement to watch the Jets game. So tune into the Illegal Curve post-game show. It'll be the Drew Mindell and Ezra Ginsburg experience, probably around 11:45. And as we mentioned, tune into the CJOB 680 pregame show beginning at 7 o'clock. And then you'll hear Paulie Edmonds and Jamie Thomas on the call. And then tune in to the CJOB post-game show with Kelly Moore and friends. So, Jim, thank you so much again for joining us today,
Anytime.
filling in our ace pinch hitter, our ace in the bullpen. And thank you, everyone, for watching us. Before you log off, hit the subscribe button, smash the like button, and we'll talk to you in, about 12 hours or so. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and have a great afternoon.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow @Illegal Curve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.